material sailor. Because we're living in a material world, and I am a material sailor. Because we are living in a material world, and I am a material sailor. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Let's see, what have we got going on here today? Yeah, I have divided the long patrol into two parts, and hopefully I'll get the second part recorded tomorrow and get it up tomorrow. Today's live, though, as you all know, and the long patrol for this has already started to come out in one version. Live is, of course, putting the USA's Second Fleet to work, US Coast Guard presence, missions, and deployment. And it's Patreon 47. And it is, if I can correct this, because I didn't do this yesterday, because it's Sunday today, isn't it? And it is Sunday, and it is the 27th, if I'm not mistaken. Because tomorrow is the 28th. Tomorrow is the last day of February 2022. How are we all doing? How is everyone? Let's see. Ooh, hello. Hello, Wolfry. Thank you very much for that. Let's see. Not a Wolf. Hello. Glad you've been looking forward to this. Hello, John Shea. Hello, Jack Ray. Hello, Rick Basava. Hello, Carl Viggersberg. Hello, Peter Dawson. The PayPal funding hopefully is going well for the Haida trip. It does seem to be doing okay. Jonathan Burrow. Hello, Seneca Nera. It's we'll talk about that in a bit because it is quite surprising to me how well it's doing. Hi, 9681. Hello, Jonathan Burrow. Hello, G40. Timmy Locker, Seneca Nero, Dan Freeman. Thank you, Dan. It's good to have an admin on. Hello, Stafford. Another admin on. Thank you. And we have Stephen Richards. Hello, Rip Sava. Hello, Calvin Gosbag. Bob Fry. Thank you very much. Ooh, any story of the Coast Guard should include mention of USRC, USCCGC, USS Bear, built in Dundee in 1874, commissioned in 1884, decommissioned in 1944, and lost on the tow in 1963. Yes, it should. And she's probably going to be added into tomorrow's long patrol, because tomorrow's long patrol is going to be about some of the ships, which I covered a bit in today's long patrol. I'm going to cover a bit in today's live, because it's an interesting story. But as said, I was in two minds about that long patrol, whether it was going up tomorrow or today. I ended up going up today because the dogs needed a longer walk. They really did. They've had good walks this week, but they were both very, very energetic. So I basically said, right, I'll give you a treat and I'll take you for a walk up on the Headley Heath. And of course, if I'm driving them out to Headley Heath and then driving back and walking them around Headley Heath, I should really give them a longer walk than that. And I just thought and looked at the time and went, if I put the long patrol up, that buys me an extra 40 odd minutes, which means that I won't be sliding in and late starting because everyone will know what the time is and it'll cover it. And as it was, I got home from the walks at about 6:30. So I've been home for 15 minutes. Hey! Thank you, John Shea. Thank you for the brew fund. Thank you, Team Locker. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, he's singing a Madonna song. I wasn't singing a Madonna song. I was singing... Because we are living in a material world, and I'm a material sailor. Hello, Bug Guys 89. Hello, Oliel. Hello, Zaski. Hello, Malaga. Hello, Firo. Hello, everyone. Oh, good. Run. I'm slowly passing through Drax recorded dry dock. Drax dry dock today was about 5 hours long. And I've only managed to listen to all of it that I've listened to because I mostly was listening to it while walking around with the dogs. That's occurring. Would sending a multi-class CV back to 1935 for the RN have more of an effect on World War II? Other than the Italians are stuff like a cross as you could get 54 to 72 swordfish on it. A single multi-class CV would be an extra bonus, kind of like HMS Ark Royal. It's a case of, yes, it'd be very useful. It'd be incredibly useful, and probably the design model for the ships, other carriers post-Indomitable, would be changed to be exactly like us. So the Audacious and the Indefatigables and the Indefatigable, Implacable, and the Audacious would all be Malta clones. But what would I? Well, actually, no, it's 1935. Actually, they might even build. The trouble is they'd have is in 1935 the treaties are still sort of being followed, so treaty limits would still apply. So yeah, this is off topic. This is more a Bruships topic than today's live, which is a Patron 47 topic. But I'm ready to answer it because it's an interesting one. Honestly, if she appears in 1935, then there is a global panic attack. Unless the Royal Navy can somehow keep her quiet, i.e. hide her down in the Falkland Islands or something for a few years until they need her. Oh, we have our first boss of the day. Port. Okay, got him. Good afternoon. Right, and before I start too much, I have just realised, though, I have forgotten to do one thing. So I'm going to do something slightly strange for you all. I'm going to disappear for a second down below because my iron brew bottles are all stored well underneath my desk where people can't nick them easily. But it means I can't get to them that easily either. Yeah. I'm still here. I'm just... Vive la brew! That was a long one. Yeah. We're having fun times tonight. Ooh, another one has been got by Sean Mack. And we have Sean Mack online as well. So we have 3 admins on the chat, which is probably good at the moment. Anna Pauloswick, did you see the Sal's vid on Ukrainian privateer? No, I haven't yet. I'm meaning to watch it. Yeah. We've got an interesting recording tomorrow, and if it goes the way I think it might go, I might push through and bilge pumps might actually come out on Monday. See, Richard, silly question. What was the pre-dreadnoughts known as before the dreadnoughts was built? My son asked, I just didn't know. They're just called battleships. That's all they were. Battleships. That was it. You had 2 types of ship for most of the pre-dreadnought period, the battleship and the cruiser. And various rates of cruiser, and you'd have various rates of battleship. You'd have first and second rate battleships, and some coastal defense ships, which were also sometimes called coastal battleships. And you had cruisers, first, second, and third rate, which is kind of like an echo of the Age of Sail system. And then you had the torpedoes come in, and torpedo boats, and then torpedo boat destroyers, and then everything else starts coming back from that. So, update on the Haida trip before we get into today's talk. So far, I think actually it's already reached the amount which I originally set as its limit, which I have to admit, I set as its limit thinking I would probably not get anywhere close to there because, well, to be honest, I'm always slightly shocked by the level of support you get on this. I get. I know Drac is always telling me, and Jamie's always telling me that it's normal that if you work hard, etc., on YouTube, it does tend to be reflected by the supporters. But honestly, I'm used to academia. And it has already led to an actual argument in terms of academic terms, because it led to me having an argument with someone who was, and I kid you not, decided to have a debate as to which was more worthwhile, getting traditional academic funding where you get a grant from an organization, or getting group funding like this is happening and this sort of thing. And currently, sometimes some of the money seems to just I don't understand, but you don't know. It's yeah, I am quite shocked by how much the amount currently is raised is okay. I'm gonna have to put the amount up to again, the target up again, because it goes off over the target, it gets into trouble. But yeah, the target, the amount raised is way more than I thought anyone would ever give me. So thank you very much to everyone. I honestly didn't expect it, and as I said, it's already led to a very interesting argument with a colleague over the support in terms of academic terms, and whether it's in their view it's debasing academia doing this sort of thing, and you just their view was that you just end up repeating the same popular history because that's all people are all the everyone's interested in their mind, all the public's interested in, and all of anyone who's not an academic historian, and so there's no point. It's bad for academic history and bad policy to actually do this sort of thing. You'd be glad to know I am not going to jail for murder. Luckily, it was a video conference discussion. I couldn't quite physically reach them. But no, I just thank you. It's all I can say for all the support. It's just completely out of my normal understanding of the world in the world in academia I work in. I'm not saying it's a nasty world in academia. I'm just saying that the prizes are very small and the fighting, therefore, is incredibly vicious. So, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jack Ray, and all those things. Yes, I have refreshed the Haida trip. I haven't updated this, but I can refresh the Haida trip. I can do, and I will, if you want, actually, I will do this live. I will refresh it live as we speak, which is always fun to do. Let's see. See, the thing is, this is the other trouble. It's like I'm recording videos all the time, and sometimes they're for a few days in advance. So sometimes the figures that are going to be given on this, in some respect, in some days coming up, is going to be much, much lower. I don't know. I just thank you. Yeah. I know. I do know at least one person is personally campaigning for me to try and get it up even higher, because Dan, who is joining us hopefully in Canada for the trip, would like us to add on more, and so I think he'd like me to ask for a lot more so I can be able to do it all. Let's see if we can refresh this. There we go. That's the current running total. Thank you very much to everyone who has done it. It's 23 days to go, and it's one. I honestly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Aaron, let's get into history before I turn very non-British and start bawling or something. Now there's a competition going on between Stafford and Sean and Dan over who whacks the troll first in the chat. See, I'll answer that one. Wayne Warren, talking Coast Guard, new Canadian ships are 4,000 tons. Yeah, they are, and they're good ships for their role. No, I still have 11 other questions for tonight's streams. Don't worry. Basically, when I decided to do this, I was hoping to get some very good books, and I ordered a lot of books, and so far I haven't been happy with any of them. Seneca, is there a problem in your house with people nicking iron brew? I'm the only boy a boy in a family in a very large family, all of which drink iron brew. What do you think? I have a mother who doesn't drink iron brew, just occasionally has a little glass. Naval, hi, Tanner. Don't worry, it's understandable just finishing the dry dock. Steve Richards, is that your plane ticket covered? The plane ticket is covered. I've actually booked the plane ticket. That is going to. This is going towards accommodation and things now, and there are some fees, as I explained. While I'm discussing this, basically, the fee for filming on Haida is a certain amount, roughly £500, and there's a fee for filming aboard Sackville, which is roughly the same. And basically, I'm putting in my money. I've very kindly got a little bit of money from a very nice group who I'm not allowed to name because, well, let's put it this way. Drac and Sal and Jamie know the full story of the people who very kindly have given me some money. And the exact words from Sal were, "You couldn't get a more academic story known to mankind." But I'm not allowed to say who they are. I don't mind. They very kindly given me the money. It's arriving in March. And yeah, so I'm combining my own money and whatever very kind people support me with. And that's going to pay for, altogether, it's going to pay for the flights. It's going to pay, I've got to pay its accommodation. The spending money is coming from my own pocket, but I do expect that I will probably spend a lot in the bookshops out there because they're good ones. So this is why I'm buying plane tickets, which allow me to, which include baggage allowance bought beforehand. Mainly because not the book, the bag going out is going to contain a laptop, a couple of books, and clothing. The bag coming back is going to contain about 30 odd books, probably, knowing me and bookstores. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and that's all the things sorted really, and car of course. But no, it's all doable. It's all nice. Mm. And yeah, Stafford, you don't need to chip in. You're gonna, in nicest way. I'm sure you haven't realised this, but we're relying on you being there when we are there, especially around Haida, because we're hoping you're going to help us navigate around locally. I think is the plan. Me and Drac are probably going to be messaging with. We need someone to help us with that. We do usually have, when we went to Jersey, we had a lovely gentleman helped us around and helped sort things out and made sure we knew where we were going and didn't get lost. And it's going to be sort of the same in Hamilton, hopefully, and in Halifax. I'm not sure what we're going to do there. I myself am planning on going to Saskatchewan and the archives in Halifax. I've told people that's going to be quite boring, me in the archives. And how is getting paid properly for your hard work the basing field? Don't get me started on some of the people in academia. Please don't get me started. Shackle and Shackle and Panzer Chief. Hey, no, nothing noted in it in Odes Stafford. Sure. All knowledge must be contained in an ivory tower or any attempt to leave that sort in peasants' learning. Yeah, I have. I'm not sure if you've all realised this, and this is something which definitely is going to come from this tonight's discussion. I have big problems with the idea of we should keep learning to ourselves. My grandfather, my father, especially in his later years, and certainly my mum, have always taught me the point of learning is so you can pass it on. Learning and knowledge is kind of like an infectious disease. If you keep it all to yourself, it gets very, very bad for you and just coops up in your brain, where and can send you all sorts of weird things. But if you share it around, it usually disperses and is quite useful. I can't find a link to Ponderosa. Can anyone share it? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Marga. And thank you, Dan Freeman. There should have been a link down below in the description. There should be a link, he says. He says there should be a link in the description. If there isn't, then I forgot to add it in here, didn't I? Yeah, I did. I forgot to add it in because I was so busy. If you, by the way, before we start, I kid you not, there is a document down below I have linked to, which says in it, the Coast Guard needs a mission statement, and it's from 2015. And I kid you not, that document has caused me more wind-up than anything else. I mean, seriously. That is a document which is, yeah. Anyway, so thank you very much, and let's get off the topics of academia and other things, and let's get into the proper discussions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Now for that. Oh, good lord. My brain. I'm looking forward to seeing Alex kiss Agency as Haida. Oh. Hello, Ozworski. Where are the coastal fluffies? They are currently inside. Actually, no, since Putin's been talking about nuclear warfare, and this is the only topic I'm going to bring up on Ukraine this evening, because I'm going to be Ukraine focused all day tomorrow with Belgium, etc. And I like to give these lives, and I think me and Jack both have some policy in that we're trying to give people, if they are watching, especially if they are watching from areas where they're far higher stress than we are, a chance to basically get out of it for a couple of hours and think about something else for a bit, as much as you can do under those circumstances. Yeah, my family have basically. My mum's response to Putin's nuclear threats has been basically the dogs are staying with me, and we are going to car, and we're going to go move away from here as fast as we can if we need to. And I'm going, well, it depends on their accuracy. Vision, which Jersey? The Jersey Islands of Jersey. Hello, Cody85. Oh, right. I'll look forward to Stafford. John Armenia, any bookstore? I'll have a quick look. Yes. This is going to be an interesting trip. There are me and Drac, and there are bookstores there. And neither of us have got anyone who visits to tell us to not buy it. Oh. That vision. We might well cross. If we're there for long enough, we definitely will cross the border. not. It might be quite long. It's going to depend on all of you, basically. So, Sherman, Newton had one of my favourite quotes in Valis. If I have seen further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Yep. Prof. Lambert definitely has the same policy of talking to anyone. Vision, with a private car and proper passports, crossing the border is not too big a problem. Yeah, that should be okay. The I sort of mucked up the numbering at the end. Don't worry, it's just I need to sort out the numbering and things. I need to sort out that end slide. I have a generated end slide and it's gone wrong. It's died because this month has turned into a 46 and 47. That caused it to have a panic attack. Yeah, yes, my plan also at some point is to try and get to Poland to see our people Blazonkia. Although probably, yeah, that'll be fun. Oh no, I think Drac and Alex were planning on using an AN225 to bring home their book haul. We could do. Anyway, let's get this all properly started. And right then. So the revenue cutter service comes about in 1790, and it's really the beginnings. And when I say the beginnings, I mean really is the beginnings of the United States Coast Guard. It's one of those interesting organizations because whilst the modern Coast Guard comes about after the beginning of the First World War, but before the American entry into the First World War, 1915. But Alexander Hamilton, who is famous for so many things, including certain, musicals which are quite popular at the moment, and of course sharing a name with Alexander the Great and myself, lobbied the Congress for to authorize a system of cutters to enforce tariffs and all sorts of things, which would be a source of revenue for the new nation. It's about stabilizing the nation. And in many ways, 4th August 1790, which is now recognized as the Coast Guard's official birthday, the passing of the Tariff Act and the recruitment of the officers and the 10 cutters. So they would recruit 40 revenue officers and 10 cutters. Each cutter was assigned a master and 3 mates who were the commissioned officers. So 4 officers for each cutter and 10 cutters. This was going to be far more important than the US Navy was in 1790, because the US Navy was something which was going to cost money. Okay, the US Navy is a cost center. The Revenue Cutter Service was going to be a revenue center. So it was going to make the US money. Now, remember, the Royal Navy has various policies on how to make the British government money. Usually it's various forms of piracy, filling in this role, and fishery protection, pretty much, and occasionally capturing small islands around the world. The US Navy never really gets in on those tricks. And it stays pretty much a cost center, which is one of the reasons it always has trouble with Congress. Because they always see it as money going out the door, and they're trying to measure out how they get value for money from a navy. In fact, getting value from working out how you get value for money is very arbitrary, and to an extent depends upon perspective and what you're looking for, which is why there are certain organizations, especially think tanks and modern ones, which have quite a fun time going, oh, this stuff all costs money and there's no point in it, da 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 da. And they can make that case because it's very difficult to show the value of presence. It's very difficult to show the value of operations. But the Coast Guard, well, they're the revenue marine. They are the revenue cutter service. They are about bringing in money, and they are linked to the Treasury. Now, this helps them on several rungs. One, they're about bringing money into the government, and they're a nice way of bringing money into the government because they avoid the states, so they don't impinge upon state rights, so they never run into that problem. And most importantly, and here's a dirty little secret about it, they don't upset the states either, because it's mostly on things which are being imported. So therefore, it's not usually the Americans, citizens, who complain about them. For them, there's an advantage in that they're part of the Treasury. And as we all know, whilst the Treasury will always exist in any government, it will have desire to cut every other department's budget to the bones, there is always one department which the Treasury is always very, very keen on making sure it's properly funded. And that is, of course, the Treasury. This is why, to this day, the Secret Service is so well funded, and traditionally, and probably why the Coast Guard is upset that they got moved. Who wants to be part of Homeland Security or Department of Defense? Being part of the Treasury is so much better for your finances. No one ever argues with your amount being spent on you. Nancy Curran, did the US Coast Guard operate ex-USN ships? Occasionally, but these weren't. These first ships were brand new for them. As time goes on, occasionally they've inherited US Navy ships. Occasionally they've just built more versions of US Navy ships. But they usually get their own, and these 10 are brand new for them. And here is this lovely quote, which I have to admit came from a very interesting source. Agreeably to your orders, I have sent you a description of the cutter Massachusetts, built at Newbury Port in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the year 1791. She has on one deck, 2 masts. Her length is 60 feet above her upper deck. Her depth is 7 feet 8 inches. Breadth 17 feet 8 inches. She measures 70 tons. She's a square stern schooner. Has quarter badges and an Indian's head for figurehead. She has a long quarterdeck and a deep waist. They were built sturdy, survivable ships. Between 1794 and 1865, the Revenue Marine captured approximately 500 slave ships. And you have to remember that the Continental Navy had been disbanded in 1790, and the US Navy is only reformed in 1798. So for 8 years, these 10 revenue cutter ships are the US's only naval force. So they had duties for those 8 years of enforcement of tariffs, combating piracy, rescuing mariners in distress. They did everything for those 8 years, for their first 8 years of existence. And to this day, the US Coast Guard is often filling in these roles. And as early as 1822, the US Coast Guard got involved in what they would call today their environmental protection mission, but I would call it more a conservation of resources mission, in that they were doing protecting timber under the 1822 Timber Act. They are a very cool little force and very important. Jack Ray. So I see the paypal doesn't stop if it goes above max. It has, and I have to say I'm not quite sure on the Haida one. It gives it gets a bit iffy. So here, they destroyed Maria. The plane was so useful. That's annoying. But it's it says a lot about what's been going on. Anyway, this is some of the historical involvement in national security. And if you have heard today's long patrol, you've already heard me talk my way through it. So basically, if you want to hear it talk through, I'll talk through it. But the point is, when you start talking about national security and the involvement of the Coast Guard, people naturally draw towards the wars, especially the early ones, and they get involved. Their first war is the Quasi-War with France, 1799 to 1801. That's often forgotten. What's interesting, though, is there is a gap here. Because they talk about the Quasi-War with France, and they talk about the Seminole Wars in 1836 to 1844. But they don't talk about the War of 1812. And so I did some research on that one. And it came up. I did manage to find it, a lovely document, which is also should be down below in the links. If it isn't, let me just check. It wasn't. It is a rather cool document and some rather cool research came from it, because I use it to source myself and go looking for books. Anyway, it's got lovely stuff about what they get up to, but most interesting was the Battle for the Surveyor, and also the various works of the Cutter Vigilant in capturing an enemy privateer. But my favourite is this story. Brown water operations, it comes under, and it's about the cutter Mercury, which foiled the invasion of North Carolina. During the War of 1812, the revenue cutters undertook new missions and established their reputation as effective shallow water or brown water naval vessels, something which the US Coast Guard still operates in to this day. The sailing warships of the US Navy were too large to enter many inland waterways of the American coastline. However, revenue cutters were intended to catch smugglers in coastal waters and proved effective in navigating such areas. During the British invasion of North Carolina coast, the revenue cutter Mercury proved the value of small manoeuvrable vessels in these shallow sounds and inland waterways. Home port in the city of New Bern, North Carolina, Mercury was perfect for operating North Carolina's shallow coastal waters. The cutter's master, David Wallace, came from a prominent family from the state's Outer Banks and brought an intimate knowledge of the coast. By late May 1813, the British blockade began to encircle the southern port cities, including Roanoke, North Carolina, located next to the channel through the Outer Banks, to serve as the entrance to North Carolina's inland sounds. Clarke proved easy prey for British attackers. In May 21st, the British privateer Venus of Bermuda attempted a surprise attack on Mercury and other American vessels anchored at Ocracoke. Ocracoke. I'm probably mangling that horribly. Local inhabitants heard them coming, raised alarm, and whilst the privateer managed to escape, it did not get away unscathed and did not achieve its mission. In midsummer, a Royal Navy squadron appears off Ocracoke, and July the 12th, 1813, Mercury saved the day after the squadron launched a surprise attack. 15 armed barges supporting approximately 1,000 British officers and men. I did love the way that it's terribly American when it writes over. It goes, British officers and enlisted men. Enlisted? That's what we're going to call the sailors in the Royal Navy in 1813? Enlisted? Okay, we can call them that. It's very modern language for there. Captured 2 of the American privateer brigs, but Mercury managed to escape with the local customs house papers and bonds by crowding upon her every inch of canvas she had and by cutting away her longboat. The British had obviously hoped to take the cutter. It would have been nice. They took the 2 privateers, but they didn't get the cutter. The cutter would have been far more useful. And the reason they wanted the cutter was that it would assist their barge flotilla when it entered the Pamlico Sound and help them with capturing the city of New Bern. But because she managed to outrun the barges and sail quickly to New Bern and warn the city officials of the attack by British troops, they managed to protect themselves. So the locals mustered the necessary army and militia forces to defend the city, and the British decided not to push it on. Honestly, I don't think the British were actually mounting a proper invasion. From my reading of the British plans, I think calling it an invasion attempt is a bit much. I'd say this was more the British raiding. And the British model for raiding is to go in, take what you can, and the moment you're looking at stiff resistance, which will mean you start to take casualties, withdraw and go, we got what we wanted, we got swag, we're out of here. You know, the British raiding parties and amphibious warfare doctrine is basically the equivalent of those people who turn up at fancy parties for like 15 minutes, do one circuit of the room, manage to wave at everyone, do something interesting, make some interesting non sequitur that people will talk about, and then grab the swag bag and disappear. Before there's actually anything like, I don't know, an auction or something to raise money for the charity that the party's being hosted for. We all know someone like that. Honestly, my track record for avoiding these parties is pretty darn good. Usually, though, I do leave a check for the charity. But it's more a case of, you want to discuss that again? I'm going out of here. Unfortunately for Mercury is that she wasn't always successful, and while she remained on purpose and remained active in North Carolina waters throughout the war, in November 1814, she actually captured the ship Fox, which had been used as a tender by the ship line HMS Ramleys, and managed to sort of deliver that to New Bern and go, yes, we've got a great victory. Not quite sure, considering it was a midshipman's command and had a total of 7 sailors on it. Well. So, now we're at the American Civil War. And by the way, if you ever need to answer, what is the first warship which fires a shot in the US Civil War? It is US revenue cutter Harriet Lane. Yes, it is the Harriet Lane. I do love her, that she is a really cool ship. She was brand new in 1857. So really quite young by US Navy terms. She was actually captured by the Confederates in 1863, and they used her for mercantile service after that point. But she's recaptured, of course, at the end of the war. The US Navy declared her unfit for service and sold her at this point. She would eventually be abandoned at sea under the name of Elliot Ritchie in 1881 by her crew. But, yeah. She was named after the niece of James Buchanan, who was a senator when she was being built, as she acted as his first lady during his presidency. She weighed 730 tons, or 639 tons burthen. Her length was 54.1 meters. Her beam was 9.3 meters. Her draft 4 meters. She had a double right-angled marine engine with two side paddles. She had a top speed of 13 knots, probably more under sail than thanks to the paddle steamers. She had a crew of 95. She carried a single 4-inch gun, a single 9-inch gun, two 8-inch guns, and two 24-pound brass howitzers out of 1862. She had taken part in the Paraguay expedition. The extra example of her firing her first shot, and I'll just explain this before I answer the questions, which are popping up in front of me, and I can see them. She was transferred to the Navy in March the 30th, 1861, to serve in the expedition that was to go to Charleston, South Carolina, with the aim of supplying Fort Sumter as the Civil War began. She departed New York on the 8th of April 8th, and arrived at Charleston on the April 11th. On the evening 11th, she fired on a civilian steamship, the Nashville, when that merchantman appeared with no colors flying. Nashville avoided further attack by hoisting the United States ensign. And when Robert Manderson had to surrender Fort Sumter on 13th April, Harriet Lane was part of the ships which covered the withdrawal. And that shot on Nashville, to remind her to hoist her national flag and colours, is said to have been the first naval shot of the Civil War, and was fired with a 32-pounder. That's a cute bit of history. Vision. From watching BBC's Warship, the Iron does a lot of what in the US is Coast Guard work. Yes, because Britain doesn't have a second navy; it has one navy. It's also a good good thing to justify the Iron's existence. Yeah, it's Grumpy Smurf. Ooh. Not sure if we can. If we can make, we'll have a chat. We'll sort it all out. We'll try and get a group chat at some point to work out the Canada trip. But that's off topic. Vision. Treasury Department in America is not like Treasury in UK. They said hawks are in Congress, not ministers or civil servants. Oh, who do you think gives the deficit hawks all of the information? Forgotten. Didn't the US get the Philippines in the American-Spanish War? Yeah, to an extent. Christine Richards, what was the job in 1790? Rescue salvage protection? It was, in 1790, it was much as what Harriet Lane did to ensure that people were paying their dues. Basically, there are ships smuggling in this area. We're beyond patrol, and if we see a ship not doing its proper duty, we pull up alongside it, board it, and impress on them the need to do their duty. And if they don't, we confiscate everything and we get to sell it off for profit. Carlos, almost a 1-to-3 beam to length ratio. That's right. All the questions I have are off topic from this patron. Don't worry. Once we're through the slides and we've talked, I'm going to do a bit of a normal Bruship. So this is going to be a bit longer than a normal live would be anyway. So don't worry about that. Right. Governors, what? No pig one. No, that's not mentioned either. There were, as though I've said before, though, there were many pig wars, but I presume you mean the War of the Pigs between the British and the Americans. I got the next current. Are the Admiral Hipper class just heavily armed anti-aircraft cruisers, despite the 4-inch and 8-inch guns? No, the Admiral Hipper class are just heavily over-engineered 8-inch cruisers. Vision, with the Harriet Lane, I got to go back to work from lunch. Enjoy. Take care, that Vision. Very Trotsky, I'm looking forward to doing a Polish Swedish war at some point. I'm planning on getting it. Third. Gahan. Well, it was the C-17 doing the circling. I'm not sure what the C-130s were doing yesterday in terms of over Poland. Have you been to the Firing Line Museum in Cardiff? If so, can you recommend? I'm thinking of a trip down next week. It's quite good, but I haven't been for a while. When I was there, it was quite good. John, I expected for the glorious American Revolution. Well. Right. Its historical involvement in national security. Let's talk about World War II. Now, in World War II, in May 1942, Coast Guard cutter Icarus sank U-352 off Morehead City, North Carolina, taking 33 prisoners of war. They were the first German prisoners taken in combat by any US force in World War II. In September 1942, Douglas A. Monroe, signalman, first class of the US Coast Guard, actually gave his life evacuating Marines of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines at Matanica Point, Guadalcanal. President Roosevelt, posthumously awarded Monroe the Medal of Honor and is the only Coast Guardman to be awarded this decoration. That's pretty darn cool. And I did the 1943 one, which is the well, if you've ever seen certain movies about the anti-submarine warfare in the Atlantic, often they redress them up as they are these US Navy ships doing this battle. And actually, the stories are based on the exploits of the Coast Guard ships. I am ignoring your troll posts, Sean Mac. It just, I'm into World War II now. On 6th June 1944, 99 Coast Guard cutters, Coast Guard manned warships, and landing craft participated in landings at Normandy, France. Captain Miles Imlay took command of one of the assault groups attacking Omaha Beach during the invasion. He directed the invasion from the flotilla's flagship, USS LCI 87. 85 USSILs 85, 91, 92, 93 were all Coast Guard manned, were lost at the Oman beachhead that day. 60 cutters sailed in support of the invasion forces, acting as search and rescue craft for each of the landings. And a Coast Guard manned assault transport, the USS Bayfield, served as command and control vessel for the landings at Utah Beach. Here's the thing. The Coast Guard in the US have an enviable reputation for being the brown water and inshore force. And in many ways, I think possibly some of the decisions that were made in the Vietnam War, etc., where the US Navy were brought into the canal operations, they were going for the wrong service. Although they went for the naval service because they're supposed to be the warfighting force, the inshore waterways force and the force which is always specialized in sort of the brown to green water areas rather than deep blue has always been the US Coast Guard, and they are very effective at it. But you might have noticed something here. There is a lot missing from their involvement in national security now. Sharansky, I wish we could have kept the Eisenhower as a museum. Sadly, steel was far more useful in rebuilding all the stuff destroyed during the war. An example of German engine over near engineering. Honestly, it would be lovely to have some examples of German over engineering around. It might help us with some of the and some of the British construction as well. We have Belfast, but that's really not, and Caroline and Cavalier, and that's really not enough. You need to have more, because one of the things I think about the Americans is I can show you how good American engineering was in World War II, because I've got a plethora of examples I can take you around. And I can show you it. And that's far more real and tangible than what I can show you from the books. Because if it's just a picture, just the words of someone who sadly has long since departed, it's not touchable in that way. It's not able to be reached out. Hi there, creatures. World War II. The early bits where US ships aggressively charged down innocent German torpedoes. No, mostly it was USS Coast Guard vessels. The Lake class were particularly good. Although I have to admit, the Lake class have another sort of little issue. In that they also get called the Banff class sloops, which is rather on the nose. They were built as warships. There were a group of 10 warships it was the Banff class. They served the Royal Navy. They were built as Lake class cutters. In 1941, they were loaned to the Royal Navy as ASW escort ships. And basically, what happened was the Royal Navy took HMS Malaya, damaged battleship, to Brooklyn Naval Yard to be repaired. Had a load of crew of it. It's going to take a while to repair it. So what they did with that crew was they manned up 10 sloops and took them back. Initially used as part of Western Approaches Command for escort for convoys such as the SL convoys from Sierra Leone to Liverpool, and one HMS Culver was actually sunk by a German submarine. They were all given Royal Navy names. So Chellan became Lulworth, Pontchartrain became Heartland, Tahoe became Fishguard, Mendota became Culver, Ithaca became Gorleston, Sebago became Olney, Saranac became Banff, Shoshone became Langard, and Cayuga became Totland, and this one, CGC Champlain, became Senon. which sounds like it's for Sennen Cove to me. Anyway, she would have a Type 271 radar installed, and she'd escort lots of convoys. She was assigned mainly to the 45th Escort Group and was assigned to Operation Torch. After the invasion of North Africa, she returned to escorting convoys and later was assigned to the 1st Support Group during the battles for convoys ONS-4, ONS-5, and SC-130. She was credited with sinking U-954 while defending as SC-130 in May 1943. And of course, that particular U-boat is famous because it had Karl Donnetz's son, Peter Donnetz, aboard. She's then refitted at Grimsby and joined the Indian Ocean Kildini Escort Force from October 1943 until a refit in Durban in November 1944. Following completion of the refit, in March 1945, she's assigned to Operation Zipper for the rest of the war, returns to the United States in March 1946, where she's redesignated a US CGEC Champlain and scrapped in 1948. These were very good little ships. In fact, they were definitely sloops. They are 1,571 tons, 76 meters of overall length, 12.8 meters in beam, 4.88 meters in draft. They have Babcock and Wilcox boilers, 2 of them, Curtiss turbine generator, and a single shaft electric motor with 3,200 indicated horsepower. They had a top speed of 16 knots. But most importantly for their work as sloops, they had a range of 7,542 nautical miles at 12 knots, which is frankly fan-flipping-tastic for this period. And this is something which is really interesting because one of the questions that came up earlier was, of course, did the Coast Guard always get second-hand US Navy ships? No, because usually US Navy ships, if the US Navy was building a ship of this size, they want it to be faster because they'd be building a destroyer. They didn't build sloops. The Royal Navy built sloops. Honestly, the Royal Navy and the US Coast Guard have far more in common in their construction practices than the US Navy and the Royal Navy in the 1920s and 30s. Because the Royal Navy have different philosophy from the USN on their destroyer design, on their carrier design, on all the things, on all their operations, which comes back to basically the geostrategic realities of their decisions, of their positions, and their operational doctrines and the realities of their circumstance. But when you look at the sloop design, what the Royal Navy is using for pretty much this role, and what the US Coast Guard's cutter design is, it's a case of, oh my lord, you could be twins. Or, I don't know, brothers from another mother, or sisters from another mister. Either way, they are very, very similar when you look at this. I would say this goes on to this day because if we consider when the Royal Navy was short at one point of engineers and they were having issues, and the Americans offered to help us out short term because it was basically a generation had retired and we were missing a sort of generation in between because we had young ones coming up and we needed a certain number in a certain level in terms of gas turbines and operations. The other went, oh, would you like some US Navy ones? No, we'll take US Coast Guard though. Tom Simon, how many German surface ships survived the war besides Prince Jürgen? Again, not many. Most of the ones that did survive were either sunk in harbour and then refloated afterwards and taken off the scrap. But surviving German warships, World War II. Prince Eugen, I would argue, doesn't really survive because, yeah, Prince Eugen, of course, is pretty much the only. Well, no, she doesn't really. The other one, it's Nuremberg. Nuremberg. She'd been torpedoed earlier in the war by the British, but she was repaired. The lack of fuel, so she hadn't used it. She actually ends up being called Admiral Makarov and used as the Soviet Union as part of their war reparations. But I think that's one of the few. I don't think she really survives. There are a few German submarines dotted around the place that you can go and find. There's a Type 21 submarine that's moored in Bremerhaven, I think. Uh, but not many ships did survive with the Germans. The British were fairly obsessive making sure they sunk them. Carl Cameron, Doc, wasn't it a Coast Guard ship that was vault between sides during the Bismarck chase? I think one might have been involved wandering around at that point, but I can't remember which one. Try now. Thanks, Doc. It's so cool to hear someone talk about the Coast Guard in even a remotely positive way. I have a lot of love and affection for the US Coast Guard. I have met a lot of coasties in my time, and they've always struck me as being utterly professional, whilst at the same time very easy to talk to. They don't tend to take themselves too seriously. So, are you saying the tribals would have a better rep if more had been preserved? Yes, because you could walk around them. And the fact that Haida survives is amazing. But the trouble is, the trouble is with tribal destroyers, etc. Is Haida survives, but even if it had survived in the UK, it probably would still not have as good a press as it deserves, because let's be honest, we are terrible in most of the what I'd say the British parts of the Anglosphere or the British orientated parts of the Anglosphere at blowing our own trumpets and saying how good something is. So anyway, what was transported from Sierra Leone to Britain? Lots of stuff. Basically, Britain had several gathering points around the world, and the Sierra Leone to Britain convoys tended to be the ones coming back from the Indian Ocean, etc. So they would come around the Indian Ocean, come around Africa, and they would gather at Sierra Leone, and then would be convoyed up from there. So there'd be convoys from the Cape to Sierra Leone, and then ships would go back down, and then there are convoys round the Cape from the Indian Ocean, and then so basically Sierra Leone is one of those gathering ports that they use for handing over convoys and for staging ships out of. But lots and lots of raw materials and personnel came from Sierra Leone. Well, Senator from there, they couldn't go all the way around the world. 7,500 nautical miles is roughly the distance. Well, this was way. It's 8,000 nautical miles from the UK to the Falklands. So 7,500 roughly. 7,500. It gets you a good chunk of the way across around an ocean. They are very good ships. Worth noting, there's a saying that self-praise and no recommendation. I do agree. Self-praise is no recommendation, but there's also a thing of, in my experience, and I've had to learn to do this in a way. No one else is ever going to sing your praises unless you believe in yourself, and no one else is going to be a salesman for you and your abilities unless you're prepared to step up and at least sell your abilities in a way, in some form. You have to believe in yourself. It's kind of like, again, the Presence mission, and that's why I'm calling it. The Presence mission is all about ships turning up and crews and the way they act. If a crew turns up and they're all very polite, very nice, but they don't strike you as confident in their abilities, and they don't say, "Yes, look at our, look, we can do this, we can do that, dun 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 dun," then you don't get as good an impression as a ship which turns up where the crew are very switched on, and the crew do go, "Yes, we can do this. Yes, we can do that." And it's part, in a way, of the can-do attitude which navies have to inoculate into their sailors to deal with the scenarios they're faced with, often fighting the sea itself, and Coast Guard, etc., has to inoculate into its personnel, so that they do know they can do this. And that's where the Presence mission comes from. Did the Royal Navy capture any G1 boats? I think they did capture a few Chanel boats and some of the F1s. They captured, I think, more of the F1s than the Chanel boats. They had a lot of fun capturing the occasion these ships. There were a few very interesting dog boat teams who like to try and capture their counterparts on a semi-regular basis. Hi, Rankash. For circumference of the Earth is 40,000 and 75 kilometers, and from the poles 40,007 kilometers, which works out at. Let me just check it into nautical miles. That's 21,638 nautical miles, Stafford. So it could do a little over a third of the way around the world on one tank of gas. So honestly, that's still not bad, because if it can go around the world on 3 refuelings, that's pretty darn decent. And still have gas left in the tank. If it was traveling around the equator and could stick to the equator, it could do it in 3 tanks of fuel. That's pretty darn good. Anyway, I didn't, because I'd got distracted by questions, I didn't talk through this at all. And what I wanted to talk about this was the Vietnam War, because 9th of February 1968, Coast Guard cutters, Androscoggin, Minnetonka, Winona, along with 82 footers and Navy assets on patrol in Vietnamese waters, thwarted a communist attempt to run for 4 trawlers through the Mark time blockade off the coast of South Vietnam. It was kind of interesting looking this up, because it's hailed as the most significant naval victory of the Vietnam War. And I thought it was cool because it's, of course, February when this happened. And when I looked it up and started looking through it, one of the things I found out was very quickly there wasn't. It, of course, is after the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive has started on the 20th of January. And that's carrying on. But during the Tet Offensive, the Vietnamese are trying to run supplies in to support their forces. And one of the things often forgot about the Tet Offensive is, of course, the US actually, and the US and the South Vietnamese forces actually win tactically. And they win tactically rather, like other operations in the world have been won by starving the enemy of resources and going, no, you're not going to get anything. And this is what happens. And this is one of the operations that happens. And it's the US Coast Guard which is called in to shut it down. Because the US Navy realizes pretty darn quickly that they're not as good as that as, well, as the US Coast Guard are. So they call them in and they go, hey, Coasties, yes, can we have some help? And the Coast Guard go, yeah, fine, we will help, but you have to be nice to us. And the US Navy goes, yeah, we will, while crossing their fingers. It happens. It does. They get involved, the US Coast Guard gets involved in everything, and they are pretty much a cornerstone of US efforts around the world. And then comes these things. These are some of the most useful ships the US has ever actually built. And it's rather appropriate they are called Hamilton class. They are named for the guy who actually got the Coast Guard set up. Because without them, the US Coast Guard would not have been anywhere near as capable as it was in the Cold War. They were prefects as, well, WEC cutters. They had they're called high endurance cutters. And they were named for secretaries of the Treasury, which really did help because, again, who's going to have to give them funding? It's going to be coming from the Treasury. Yes, I know Congress has deficit hawks, and I know all that, but the Treasury, if the Treasury's behind it, does help you when you're dealing with these things. Come, isn't the truth that the truth? Me believing myself and always pushing my knowledge is why the museum I work for now is training me in its scales navies. Yes. Whereas HMS Seek's career was cut short by HMS Prince of Wales. Literally. Did you write it as an intentional dark humour, or was it a happy accident? A bit of both. A bit of both. And mainly also because one of the things I found out, and this is going on topic, this is one of my favourite topics to talk about, is when I talked about HMS Seek, the amount of people who were surprised to hear about it, and I ended up having a wonderful chat with some gentlemen who were. This was pre-COVID actually, and it got cancelled by COVID, but they might start up again. A temple in London who wanted me to come and give a talk about what HMS Seek had got up to for the Royal Navy, because they were really quite proud of there having been ships called HMS Seek and what they'd done. They found it really quite. I think one of their sons is in the Royal Navy or something, and they were listening, going, "So you mean the Royal Navy had a ship named for us?" Yes, because you were considered such fierce warriors and such honourable warriors. They named a destroyer for you. Oh, and by the way, this ship did all this before it was cut in half by basically a battleship. And I'm just going, that was a fun conversation to have. Whereas if it could go around the world on 3 tanks of gas, it could get anyone in the world from 2. Yeah. Albeit sailing through equatorial Africa with a Coast Guard cutter is a tad steampunkish, but it would be fun to give it a go, wouldn't it? Their own catch. Should we propose renaming the US Coast Guard the Great White Fleet? They're definitely the success of the inheritors of the Great White Fleet in terms of global presence. Rob dare I ask why Patreon no Bruships? Well, yes, it's quite simple. 3 topics won the Patreon vote. There was a joint pair, and I can't manufacture extra Thursdays in the month, so I decided that I would swap one of the Bruships to a patron and combine the 2. And I thought the Coast Guard would be a good one to discuss with a Bruships because it's a good topic to talk about with and start off Bruships discussions. Let's see, why didn't the USN sell the LCS to the US Coast Guard? Because the US Coast Guard won't buy it. They buy decent ships. Listen, this is the Hamilton class, and they were in service from 1967 to, let's see, John Midget and Mellon were only decommissioned in 2020. Sherman was decommissioned in 2018, and quite a lot of these vessels, when they're decommissioned, have been transferred to the Philippine Navy. The Mellon is going to the Royal Bahrain Naval Force. The Chase has been transferred to the Nigerian Navy because they are built very solidly and very good ships. So they're often actually better for those navies to buy. Currently, operators are the Bangladesh Navy, Nigerian Navy, Philippine Navy, Sri Lankan Navy, and Vietnam Coast Navy. Vietnam's Coast Guard. Because they're all quite good ships. They were armed with an Otto Malera 76mm, some 25mm. They had a phalanx close-in weapon system and full flight deck and hangar for an MH-65 helicopter. They're known as high-endurance cutters. They had a displacement of 3,250 metric tons, 150 meters long, 13 meters a beam, draft of 4.6 meters. And what do you know? Top speed of 29 knots. But here is the real kicker of the Hamilton class, and one of the reasons why the US Navy really loved them going around the world with their carrier battle groups. A range of 14,000 nautical miles. $14,000 nautical miles. At a decent speed. I think it was 15 knots, roughly. There are some recordings, in case of Jarvis, she was reckoned to be capable of 16,000 nautical miles. But I haven't found out what speed that was at. These ships are good ships. They are very long-range vessels. They're very capable. This itself is, of course, Hamilton. Hamilton deployed to Vietnam between 1969 and 70, interdicting weapon smugglers and firing more than 4,600 rounds in support of US and South Vietnamese troops ashore. 65 to 75, it served on the Atlantic Ocean stations, conducting oceanographic data, research, search and rescue missions. It also directed the interdictions of 21,000 Haitian migrants through the Caribbean during Operation Able Manor. In 1994, it received the Coast Guard Meritorious Unit Commendation for rescuing 135 Haitians after their sailboat capsized and sunk. It transited to Panama Canal in 1996 and served as the command and control platform for Operation Frontier Shield, the multi-agency effort to curtail the influx of narcotics into the United States. Not sure how well that went. As part of that role, Hamilton herself intercepted 14 vessels, which were carrying more than 115 tons of contraband and $200 million worth. That's roughly $200 million worth at the time. In 1999, Hamilton seized over 2.5, well, nearly 3 tons of cocaine bound for the US, and frequently patrolled the Bering Sea off the Alaskan coast and maritime boundary line with Russia. Protecting American fishing, but also protecting the American presence up there in a non-threatening but very visible way. And it was Hamilton, along with her sister Sherman, which took part in the largest recorded maritime drug bust in history. They intercepted a Panamanian-flagged fishing vessel, Ganton, in international waters. This was in 2007, and seized from that ship alone 20 tons of cocaine with an estimated value at the time of $600 million. These ships are useful. Really useful. And really quite cool. People, it's not a case of why does the US, why the US Coast Guard don't buy US Navy ships. It should be a question at some point of why is the US Navy not letting the US Coast Guard design some of their ships? Those Hamptons look like just the thing for arguing with Chinese fishing fleet, even if secondhand. They are quite good for that one. Ollie LL, there is something very appealing about that white camo scheme with the red stripe. I know, I said this in the Long Patrol, which came out today. It is a really cool scheme. It looks really swish and really gives them a presence and an impact. Don't Cash, why are the sides so aerated? Is that a metallic side issue or utility design for boats, some form of shipside antics? I go back to it. It is for boats and shipside antics. It's basically to allow easier boarding of other ships. China, 16,000 miles. No, so 16,000 miles. We've been just to just say this. It's 21,600 nautical miles. So basically, she could get round. They could get if they even on the 14,000 nautical miles, they could get round the Earth on a tank and a half of gas. So one fill up, and they could do a circumnavigate the world. And that would be even if they went, not going through equatorial Africa, but having to go up round Africa and around North Africa through the Mediterranean. After going through the Suez sort of thing, starting off one side of the Panama Canal, going through that, going around the world as close as it can to the equator, going up. Yeah, they'd only need to refill once. They're very good ships and very useful ships for this sort of thing. This is your economical presence mission. You need to do presence, send a Coast Guard ship. Not a golf. What I wouldn't give for US ships to be that paint king scheme with blue and gold as orange. Could be. Come on, have a ship or two with this white red USD paint in a scheme World War ships. About more if memory serves. Nice. Ranker carries 20 tons of cocaine and then shows unbelievable endurance. Suspicious. Oh. Well, we'll get on the fusion. A scheme of a fusion of Birkin and Perry. There is something going on there, but it's a very good, nice designed ship, and I like these ones. So this is a more recent picture from the Coast Guard, and this is a Coast Guard vessel entering. If I'm not mistaken, it's entering the Black Sea. Yes, it is. I also have to check my notes. They're pretty darn good ships, frankly, the US Coast Guard. And they are very cool ships. This one is, I think, it's a Legend class which was entering the Black Sea. I think it's the Bernhoff. It is, isn't it? No, it's not. It's not the Bernhoff. Is it the other type? It's the high. Is it the high endurance? Not the high endurance. They're all gone. Ding ding dong. It is, I think it is one of the. I think it is one of the Legend class because I'd recognise that type of that gun. Yeah. And honestly, the US, the Legend class, which are the newer ones themselves, which I look at the end and talk about at the end, they are pretty darn good. Their range is 12,000 nautical miles. They're slightly less, and their top speed is 28 knots, but they weigh in at 4,600 tons, and are far more heavily armed. But they do have a 57mm on the front, so I think they is a. You might have noticed, though, in all this discussion of what they do for national security, etc., I keep talking about the president's mission, but they don't. Yeah, it's the Hamilton which went to the Black Sea. Yeah. And that's where this picture comes from. It comes from USCG Hamilton. Which is one of the national security cutters, the big Legend class ones. Not sure how Alexander Hamilton has become a legend, but he has. In the history of the US Coast Guard. And the US Coast Guard are still building two more of those. Freeman, which is for Elizabeth Smith Freeman, who was a cryptanalyst, and Calhoun, which is named for Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Charles L. Calhoun. But again, I would say this, the US Coast Guard gets so shorted on construction. I mean, these ships are good, and they constantly have to almost have an argument to get the ships they want. It's a case of, yeah, we'll try and go for what exactly? What is better for the US than having a strong Coast Guard? You know, you might they're freaking useful in peacetime. I'd say this looks more like a mini Burke. It does. There is certainly a style in US construction which the Hamilton class and the Legend class all sort of fit into, with this sort of, which has produced this sort of 1970s era, modern era includes Burke sort of style hull and shaping. But I'd argue this to me, especially in this colour, looks better. And doesn't look as dated. Given some NGOs purchasing former Royal Navy fishery protection ships, are any Hamiltons slated to be sold to NGOs for maritime protection? No, they're all being bought by countries. To be honest, they all require far more crew than most NGOs can put together. The Royal Navy OPVs are usually slightly fewer crew, less crew. So, where does the President's mission fit? Well, it fits between defence readiness and other law enforcement. And it has this. Their own cash. Do naughty neighbours view US Coast Guard ships sniffing around their territory as infantry warlike act? No. You see, the thing is, a US Coast Guard vessel turns up, it's a maritime security ship. It's painted white. Here is your problem, and I did mention this in Long Patrol. You can't exactly claim to be scared of something which is painted bright white. It's kind of, they're intimidating me. It's white and it's only got a 57mm on it. It's a great big target with a tiny little gun. How's it exactly intimidating you? Because to explain how it's intimidating you have to mention the fact, well, the US Navy is a huge fleet. Well, the fact that that huge fleet exists must be intimidating to you the whole time then. The fact is, it is intimidating, but you can't say it's intimidating. It's kind of like, okay, this is puny, I can take this in a second. But if I take this, then the huge, great big hulking grey fleet comes out behind it and will smash me. So I have to give this respect, but I can't claim it's a threat. And also, they're able to talk with people in sort of they can go, well, we're here as part of fisheries protection, we're here for training, we're here for all this. The whole way through, the cutters have always had to do a presence mission because the cutters have always had to interact with neighbours. They don't often do the long range presence mission. That's something which is more, I would say, 1920s starting and into now, but definitely into the sort of the 1960s, 70s. They start to get into the more long range presence mission in terms of visiting other countries at the other side of the Pacific and the other side of the Atlantic on a regular basis. But they have always been a big presence for the US in places like South America, in, of course, visiting Canada, the Caribbean, to an extent in the Philippines, especially when it was under American control, there was usually a Coast Guard presence, and therefore visiting areas around the Philippines. And that's a 57mm on the front. Don't worry, Strider. Robert Rosebeck, would the US Coast Guard be better suited for sanctions and embargo enforcement? Yes, they are, because their ships are actually set up and designed to do that. Anti-smuggling duties and those sort of roles, they're designed for. They are designed to embark multiple boarding teams. They're designed to be present ships. So they're designed to be tooling around in an area for a long time. That's what they are. They're high-endurance ships. They are not there to fight a war. They're there to fight a peace and preserve it. Colin Cameron, Doc, is the Coast Guard now under the umbrella of Homeland Security Department? Yes, it is. Which is less fun. I think they should be put back with the Treasury because they got better money there. What is the proportional response of a merchant ship from a nation not involved in the conflict getting shut up? It depends. Does anyone apologize? If they apologize for it, then it's sorted out. Usually people just accept it that you shouldn't be operating in a war zone. If people don't apologize and threaten to do it more, that usually causes trouble. So Thompson, aren't the cutters also mostly ice rated, whereas USN ships aren't necessarily rated strongly? Yes, they have to be, because they have to go and operate in the Bering Strait. They're fancy. Too big and crew-intensive NGOs, so that African and small nations that don't have a big budget. Yes, they are very good. But African nations and Southeast Asian nations, these are excellent ships for them to get, as they allow them to perform the presence mission on a very good budget. And they're long-lasting. They tend to be well-built and long-lasting. And this is a Treasury class, and the Treasury class are another group of very interesting ships. I liked the Treasury class because of some of the random stuff they got up to. The Treasury class were succeeded by the ones that preceded the Hamilton class. They were 2,252 tons. They had a top speed of 20 knots. They could travel 12,300 nautical miles at 11 knots. Their complement was 125. As built, they carried 2 5-inch guns, 2 6-pounder guns, and 8 0.5-inch machine guns. They were built between 1936 and 1937, and they served in World War II as well. They escorted convoys. They took part in all sorts of random operations. In fact, USS Taney served in the Pacific, and uniquely was armed with 4 enclosed 538 gun mounts on centerline positions. And there's actually a picture of Taney, which I will bring up. This is from later when she visited Honolulu. Can I bring that? This is what Taney looked like in 1958. So this shows you the differences in the class that are good look. But come on, they are good ships, and they were incredibly useful for the operations they did. US Coast Guard cutters and Royal Navy sloops could, whilst the design is technically based on the Erie class gunboats for the US Navy, they were modified heavily for the Coast Guard. It was all designed on the Erie class because the idea was it would save money. But if you consider the Erie class gunboats have a range of 8,000 nautical miles at 12 knots, the Treasury class managed to get an extra 4,300 nautical miles by just dropping to 11 knots. Those engines have been modded heavily. Mm-hmm. Any good books on the US Coast Guard at war? Well, as I mentioned Long Patrol, I now have 4 books on the US Coast Guard, and they're all very good about the wartime. They're not very good about what the peacetime US Coast Guard does, unless it's a big, high-profile rescue. They seem to be all quite, they don't cover the stuff in between. Hi, Douglas. Alright, no, that's it. Thank you for saying hit a like. Aaron Cash, I'm in 2 minds. Do we think paint jobs matter in Modern Warfare? No one is doing spoiler camouflage anymore, but then no one is painting ships in neon colours, so does white paint matter? It's an interesting discussion. I honestly would like ships to return to a slightly more colourful and present national colour scheme. But especially as I can honestly say, I don't think the color scheme matters as much at the ranges that we're probably going to be engaging at. But there again, every little bit helps. And if it's viewed that the grey paint and the haze grey idea does help the ships disappear, especially when you think about when you're facing a submarine, which might be using periscope or something to clone in on you, but I presume wouldn't. These days, honestly, it's all done by sonar. Perhaps there's a reason for that. But it's something I think definitely we need to look into. Yeah, thank you. I thought that was also why the differences in the size are given size in similarity, given size similarities. Yep. However, let's face it, that number of .15 machine guns on a US ship is not a rule, just kind of a guideline. Yeah, I'm fairly certain those lists are minimal. That's right. Philippines and Indonesia need a good ships with endurance and low cost of maintenance. They have a lot of coastline islands to patrol. Yes, they do. Hmm. Dalzowski, USGG Campbell, GC C Campbell was heavily damaged during cover operations after ramming a U-boat and lost engines. Yeah, I covered this in Long Patrol earlier. She's got movies based on her experience, although they're changed to a US Navy ship, not a Coast Guard ship. Right. So the key areas of Coast Guard monitoring and spotting, geographically, in terms of their presence missions, have always been South America first, then the Arctic. That's where their presence are, sort of North America and South America. That's Latin America. That region is where the Coast Guard have a very big presence mission. But they also have the South China Sea, Southeast Asia. They are now very much involved over there, and they even wander into Europe these days. Mission-wise, the missions under modern parlance are often described as relationship building or maritime security or grey zone conflict management, which is just a beautiful phraseology, which basically means we're turning up so that we're looking at things and so people know we're here and we're paying attention, and we're going to make sure we turn up in the brightest, whitest boat possible so that they all see we're here and see we're paying attention. We're going to hope our mere presence and a hard stare, i.e. full Paddington Bear hard stare, is going to suffice to make them realize that the severity of their actions will have consequences and that they should stop doing them right now. You'd be surprised. Whilst the strongly worded note seems to be over as a viable means of stopping people doing things, the hard stare still works. And the US Coast Guard is great at the hard stare because they are quite so visible. You cannot ignore them. The next best thing about that is an Arleigh Burke. But the Arleigh Burkes are heavily overworked, and frankly, having a few more national security cutters to do some of this presence mission would probably help a lot of the time. So, what are the rumours of the Legend class replacements? Well, the Legend class is still in construction, and no one's really working out what their replacement is going to be. The next generation of the next generation of tier below. Usually, the U.S. Coast Guard operates two tiers of cutter. Their premier one and the second rate, sort of their first rate and their second rate cutters in terms of their large oceanic cutters. And usually, sort of so now they're building a new class which are replacing their second rate vessels. So, Jonathan, will the RN be developing a new sloop class based on Legends or Hamilton's more likely, as they'd have more support abroad with other countries to take them up? That's what a Type 31 pretty much is. Have a look at a Type 31. They are, I call them the flak frigates in their terms of their armoured outfit, but basically they're a sloop. If you look at what they're being built for and what they're going to do, they're going to be global presence ships. Jonathan Morris, so this is the modern equivalent of a battlecruiser print. Modern equivalent of maybe a light cruiser turning up. Battlecruiser turning up is something a bit scarier. It's a case of, oh, sugar, we've really pissed you off now. Oh, you said one of those. Okay. You didn't have to. That's all. If we manage to invent colour-changing paint that just needs a bit of power to switch between colours, it'd be nice. Trouble is, then there is what would happen in electrical storm at sea. How would that affect the colours? Would the ship come back looking like jazz-coloured? Come on, that would actually be quite cool. You say you were in an electrical storm? Yes. And the destroyer came home painted pink. There is nothing wrong with my ship being painted pink. No, there's nothing wrong with your ship being painted pink. Stop looking at me like that. I'm not looking at you in any way, Captain. You went out with a ship in black and yellow, the traditional colours of the Royal Navy, and you came back with one with pink streaks. Stop looking at me like that. I'm not looking at you in any way, Captain. I'm just admiring that you're coming back. Oh. Well, you have to look up Paddington Bear and the stare. The hard stare was the big thing of Paddington Bear. It was his scariest weapon in his arsenal, a hard stare. Mm. Right. Back in a second. And then we will do the Arctic Patrol. But I will just leave you for a second because I heard Foxy. When I hear Foxy, I get worried. Mainly about what Foxy's up to. Where did I put the keys? I'm coming, Foxy. I can hear the noises. You're behind the blooming thing, and I'm going to have so much fun. This rate, I'm going to have to buy a Ring camera just to specifically watch that space behind my office because the fox gets caught down there. I'm not sure how the fox is getting in there. I have gone over the fence. I'm going to have to get Drac over and have him go over the fence with me, because perhaps there's something I'm missing. But seriously, Foxy just keeps getting captured, and I go, Foxy, Foxy, stop getting caught. It's not nice for Foxys to get caught. What can I say? No, if lightning struck Shiver, it would end up looking like Pollock painting. I thought someone would get the Operation Petticoat reference. John Shea, yellow and black colour scheme turning pink. Wait, what happened? Basically, electrically activated paint, so you can shift from peacetime colours to wartime colour scheme with an electrical charge. As I said, an electrical storm at sea could lend you to having something which was very, very bright. Basically, I have decided the little lady fox, because I've decided it is a lady fox. After it's got very, very, it wanders quite happily around me. It's quite used to seeing me now. It doesn't matter if I'm in the garden. If the fluffy research assistants are in the garden, it doesn't come in the garden. But if it's just me wandering around the garden, it wanders around and ignores me completely. So a little lady fox who likes to get caught. There is a little bit of a run between me and the wall and the fence on this side. And there's now a water butt there which blocks it. But that end, it's a bit of trellis. And you think if it came in that end, it would go back out that end, but it doesn't seem to go out that end. It comes on this end, and sometimes when it gets caught, I need to move the water butt a bit. Although I need to do some work on the water butt because it's currently they're conjoined water butts. We have about two of them stacked, two of them, and what happens is one fills up, and when it reaches the top, it fills up the other one. Anyway, the pipe linking to the two together is leaking on one side, on the one that's joined in. It's not leaking that much, just a little bit of seepage. So I'm going to have to fix that with some sealant. Anyway, back to tonight's topic. I do need Foxcam. I could set up Foxcam and stick it on the screen. You could see when the fox appears and know when I'm going to have to go. Right, I'm going to have. You can watch while I go deal with fox. No, I don't mind. I'm more worried about the fox getting caught when I'm away. If I'm travelling and I'm not here, and it gets caught in there and no one can get it out, and no one else gets it out. That's what I'm worried about. I said Foxcam is for that. So, Arctic Patrol. Yeah, this is the most chronically underfunded and stupidly underfunded presence mission of the US Coast Guard. And it is underfunded because, and I give you this point, 1973, nearly 50 fricking years old, still in service as a fricking icebreaker. This one, 25 years old, nearly not too far from going on for the big 3-0, but still, in the nicest way, icebreakers. They are not ships you want to take out when they're old. It's just not a system I would like to take out any point when it gets old. The Coast Guard currently operates the US Coast Guard 243 cutters, which are defined as any vessel more than 65 feet or 20 meters long, that has a permanently assigned crew and accommodations for the extended support of that crew. They vary between the National Security Cutter, which is, of course, the Legend class. They replace the Hamilton class. Then there's the Medium Endurance Cutter, the Womack. which are the Reliance class and the I think the Famous class. And that's where the new cutter, I think, is coming to replace those. Then there are the polar icebreakers. Technically, 3 of these ships. These are the heavy ones. The Polar Star and the Polar Sea are the 2 heavy ones. The Polar Sea is the one which is the Polar Sea. So it's actually the former, not the latter. I've written the latter up there. It should be the former. The Polar Sea is the one which is sitting in Washington and is not currently in active service and is being used as spare parts for the Polar Star. And then there's the Healy, which is a medium icebreaker. Now, currently, the US Coast Guard are finally being awarded. The other planning is for 3 new Polar Security Program vessels, which are icebreakers. They are going to be 3 new vessels referred to as Polar Security Cutters. And, well, they do sort of look like the Canadian idea of, as we've been talking of their Coast Guard vessels. But that's sensible. You invert the design of your colour scheme when you are designing something from the polar waters because you want something red, a nice red hull to stick out because you're going to be in the Arctic. These vessels, the new ones, are supposed to cost $745 million for the first vessel, $552 million for the second vessel, and the total for the 3 vessels is supposed to be $1.9 billion. They're originally supposed to be in the service from 2024. So that means the Polar Star will have been in service for 51 years when she's currently supposed to be succeeded. But actually, currently estimate is it's going to be 2025. So that will mean when she is 52 years old in service. These are critical vessels for the US Coast Guard. They're critical vessels for pretty much the entire American ability to project power in the Arctic or the Antarctic. They have been known they've been needing to replace them, planning they need to replace them since 2010. So it's 12 years later, and these Polar Class 2 ships that are going to be diesel powered with Azipod propulsion units and a shaft, endurance of 90 days, and armed with only a 25mm autocannon. They are theoretically going to be in service in 2025. Well, one of them will be. They'll feature, despite them only having a 25mm autocannon, a combat system which is derived from Aegis, which makes a lot of sense considering I can see a lot of SM missiles and Mark 41 BLS and standard missiles and the right sort of radar being put onto this vessel. I do like the raised up lookout spot. That's going to be pretty darn cool for observations. But no. What I find interesting is when I try and search for these and try and find out more data about them, honestly, it's pretty limited. Most of the discussions talk about them being delayed. There are some cooler pictures than that one, but they are being sort of delayed. And Polar Star is theoretically, well, Polar Star went out of service still is in service. It's a mess, really. I have to say to Coast Guard, this program. The more and more I looked at it, the more and more I felt it's a complete mess. And the amount of times Congress keeps threatening to to cut the funding is just absurd. Then, could the US pass across subs with dodgy steel in their hulls to the US Coast Guard? No. Again, the US Coast Guard wouldn't take them. No, worry. There's no one needs to worry about the Fox. I am just trying to work it out. It's one of those things which is vexing me because I haven't found the hole it's getting in. Or alternatively, there is another option. I wonder if it's doing that. I need that Fox scam. If I'm going to spot what it's doing, I need the Fox scam. Rankash. The Fox is to Dr. Lagos, better to destroyers to Bismarck. Not quite. G. Dan, for citizen protection, Britain had a battlecruiser and Germany 2 pocket battleships on the coast of Spain during the Civil War in 1956. The US sent USS Oklahoma, USS Quincy, and Coast Guard cutter Cayuga. Yep. It's a good thing that they have fixed steel hulls. It is good. Did one of them find the Franklin expedition ship Terror? I'm not sure. Might have been one of the US Coast Guard vessels. I thought it was a Canadian one, though. Underfunded because they don't have a nuclear icebreaker. Underfunded because, honestly, well, let's get into the one of the missions. Coast Guard C-130 on international ice patrol. It's a great thing and great maritime security mission. It allows you to have aerial presence justified pretty much wherever you want it to go over the northern polar waters. And yet, and I say this with all due love and respect, you couldn't have a mission which is more difficult to get funded. And the fact is, once you spot an iceberg that's going into the waterways, what do you do? How do you deal with an iceberg? Well, you'd have to send out one of your larger cutters. It either has to be one of your icebreakers, that's going to have the horsepower to be able to do something with a iceberg, or one of the national security legend class. Honestly, you'd probably prefer an iceberg. If you're going near an iceberg, you probably want it to be one of the icebreakers. And because despite some people who have some very interesting views about them. You cannot go around blowing up icebergs. It doesn't help. It's kind of like blowing up an asteroid. But it's worse. Because you see, if you blow up an asteroid far enough away, you might split it up so it can actually... It diverts out and goes round the Earth in a sort of orbital pattern and ends up orbiting and smashing into the moon. If you can divert it enough. With an iceberg, all you do is you have more large bits of ice floating around the ocean. Yes, they have more area to melt and disperse, but because they have greater surface area once they've been divided up. But they're still not exactly a good idea. Oh, let's quickly get this up again. Around it. No, that's not some form of recessed bulbous bow. That is part of the iceberg cutting system. So basically, the idea is this bit rides up over the ice, and then it cracks down. So that bit hopefully stays in the water and acts as sort of a unit to help it maneuver and dock itself. But the whole idea is this bit will come up, it will basically go and break the ice that way. Because icebreakers work in one of two fashions. You either have a bow which is supposed to smash the ice out of the way, and that can deal with thin ice and moving ice, or you have a bow which goes up and crack, and up and crack, and basically that's what this bow's designed to do. You aren't using enough explosives. Mm-hmm. Wait, so these ships tow icebergs back to the Arctic? They don't tow them back to the Arctic. What they tend to do is you tow them out of shipping lanes. So you tow them. You have major shipping lanes where ships often go, and if they're heading towards those shipping lanes, you tend to attach tow ropes, etc., by various means, and you try and push them or pull them out into areas where they are not in the middle of a major shipping lane, a major route, a major thoroughfare where merchant ships are going through. This is the Heritage class. It is diesel. Those funnels, they're usually the Coast Guard cutters do tend to be diesel powered of some kind. I know the Polar Security Cutter, i.e., this vessel, is powered by Caterpillar diesels. And the Heritage class, which are the new ships, which are also known as the Offshore Patrol Cutters, they are 4,520 tons, roughly fully loaded. They have a 57mm gun forward, and they're going to be called Argus, Chase, Ingham, Rush, Pickering, Icarus, Active, Diligence, Alert, Vigilant, and Reliance, which are basically do show the history of the US Coast Guard and its various names. They're going to be home ported in California, Alaska, Rhode Island, and it's only Argus, Chase, and Ingham which are actually under construction in various points of development. Basically, they are supposed to sort of stand between the Sentinels and the Legend class in the new Navy, in the new Coast Guard. And once they're in service and they started being in service properly, then they'll probably start looking and thinking about what they're going to replace the Legend class with. As I said, this is what the US Coast Guard does. They have roughly 3 levels of cutter, broadly speaking, and they have when they replace the big ones, then they replace the medium-sized ones, and then they replace the small ones, and then they start over again, replacing big ones, medium ones, small ones, and just keep working through it. They are pretty much the replacements for the medium endurance cutters. I'm not sure if they're going to be a replacement for the entirety of them, but they do seem to be replacements for, well, considering some of their names which they're going to be carrying are from the Reliance class. I'm presuming this Heritage class are going to replace mostly the Reliance class cutters. Currently, of which there are 14 active. And considering their names included Reliance, Diligence, Vigilant, Active, Confidence, Resolute, Valiant, Courageous, Steadfast, Dauntless, Venturous, Dependable, Vigorous, Durable, Decisive, and Alert, I presume they are going to replace them. Not sure if it's going to be a 1-for-1. I would hope it would be. I think it needs to be a 1-for-1 replacement because the Reliance class are very useful and have been very useful ships, but at the moment they are just of planning 11 and they would need to replace 14, so they need to build 3 more. But then they have talked up to 25, which means they would replace all of the medium cutters. So that's both the Reliance class and eventually the Famous class. And the Famous class, of course, is 13 in service, and there's 14 in service of the Reliance class. So there's 20. They're talking about replacing 27 ships with 25, which I'm not too keen on. And originally, of course, they had 2 more. They had actually 16 Reliance class originally in class. So it's actually, in effect, you're replacing 29 ships with 25. And I think, frankly, the Coast Guard could make do with 30. But that's for my American colleagues to argue with the Congress over. I wish them luck. I have enough fun arguing with the House of with various parliamentarians over funding the Royal Navy. How big will the Heritage class be? About 4,500 tons. Frankash, wouldn't it be better to have some form of bow thruster as the front blades would be shielded from the ice? I think that they do sort of almost. They do have some form of bow thruster in there. Interesting. Sensible engineers put emergency generators and fire main pumps in the funnel cowlings. So if the hull springs a leak, you have a power and pump capability far away from the flooding. That is true. At least one Heritage class should be called Andromeda. Jamak, do you think that the Legend class replacements will have missiles? Doubtful. They'll probably be fitted for, not with missiles, as this vessel is. This is what typical the Legend class are out there. They are fitted for, not with a lot of things. Naval guns versus iceberg is likely to simply blow chunks of the iceberg. To break it up, you need to get something to explode inside the berg, and then you still have the mini bergs to round up. Yeah, it's far easier to just bring the thing back. I don't know. So, US Coast Guard's presence in the world is mostly, and I would argue this, about being what they are. in terms of being present, being visible, and being a maritime security force. Their presence mission is often subsumed into all their other functions. They do their presence mission almost as a default function of being. It's their version of Descartes' cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, is I am present, therefore I am. Or rather, I am doing, therefore I'm present. Because they're doing one mission, they are present. And their forward presence, therefore, and their presence missions around the world are often both downplayed in terms of their impact because people don't think of them in terms of a presence mission because they're supposed to be there, they're doing there for another reason, and yet have more impact because they are there for doing for another reason. They are visibly present because of what they're doing. They do a lot for the US image around the world. I think I said in the Long Patrol, they are the USA to a lot of the world. They are the best parts of it. They are there. They are doing the stuff they need to do. And that gives the US a lot of credence around the world. So, for those of you who are watching the timeline thing below, you'll notice that I've now designated this time from now on as Bruships and Questions. So basically, I'll try and answer questions about the Coast Guard. As I said, I'm going to do another long patrol about the Coast Guard tomorrow. I'm going to go through some of the ship designs which we mentioned and give more profiles on the ships. But I thought I'd do some questions and do some Bruships questions because I know some of you are. Your normally Sunday thing is Bruships questions, so I thought I'd add in a bit about Bruships questions as well until at least the brew runs out. And luckily, I can top the glass up because the brew currently has run out. Oh, oh, glorious orange nectar of the gods. Yeah. Random question from me on the Bruships topic. Which stores stock iron brew in Canada, just in case one needs to find it when one's out there? Or if that's not the case, do I need to pay extra in baggage so I can take some bottles with me? I know I can't bring them onto the actual aircraft, but surely I can stick some iron brew in the hold. Unless I'll bring the fancy glass bottles and claim it's a form of wine, if that's more likely to get me through customs. All right. Mm-hmm. The US Coast Guard actually experimented dealing with icebergs via gunfire, mine, torpedoes, depth charges, and bombing. I know. And they came up with the idea that towing is the best option still. John Morris, so what would the modern equivalent of a heavy cruiser appearance be? Or a battleship be? Honestly, a heavy cruiser appearance is probably sort of at the level of a LHD, amphibious task group, appearing somewhere off your coast, and a battleship group is, of course, being replaced by a carrier battle group appearing off your coast. Ryan Cash. In relation to management events in Europe, some of my less informed friends are saying things like, imagine if Canada was part of a coalition of anti-US, what would they do? Well, I hope US would have the reticence to examine why everyone on their neighbors was joining such organizations. Believing that towards itself, Ukraine hadn't actually joined it. They were far more likely to join the EU than they were to join NATO, and the EU is not so much anti-Russia as obsessed with itself. In the nicest way, the EU is pretty darn insular in its foreign policy. You just have to look at it for that one to come through. And frankly, the EU tends to be steered by Germany, which Russia pretty much has, Russia has pretty much dominated for the last 20 or so years, thanks to their decisions on energy policy and their approachment rules with Russia. So, and Merkel's particular approach to Russia, where, well, she felt she had a very good relationship with Putin. I think if any world leader is currently feeling particularly upset about Putin, it's probably Merkel. But honestly, Merkel had been almost too understanding of Putin. I think she was too much worried about what could replace him and not enough worried about what he was actually himself becoming. And that's sometimes a problem. But, you know, in terms of actual things, no. It's a case of, if I was Russia, I'd be currently very worried that Sweden and Finland will probably be asking to join NATO post haste. I would if I was them. I know it's a complicated decision for them both because they're both proud and proudly neutral and pretty darn strong themselves for their size, but basically what they're seeing in Ukraine is Russia alternatively using their size to try and get what they want when things aren't going their way, threatening nuclear weapons. And of course, Ukraine gave up all its nuclear weapons a long time ago on the guarantee of people respecting its territorial integrity, and one of those signatures included Russia. But that sort of piece of paper survived. In which case, that means that, to an extent, if I was from Sweden, I'd be thinking, well, unless I want to have nuclear weapons myself, which I don't, the only option is to join an alliance where if you threaten me with nuclear weapons, then there are other powers in it who are nuclear powers who will go, well, you hit one of us, you hit all of us. At least on paper they'll say that, because that means that if you attack us, we're in trouble. And that would actually also be useful for NATO, because if you have Finland and Sweden as members, that does help with protecting the Baltic states, and they become mutually supporting and reinforcing. And also it does make the Baltic a very scary place for the Russians. Nice errands. Finally, so as Type 45 is getting... they are? Who said they're getting 16 Mark 41 VLS? Where has this been announced? I know there have been comments made about it in Parliament, but no one's announcing the Ministry of Defence or announced its funding. So if they do, that'd be great. But in the nicest way, if they've got 16 Mark 41 VLS cells, 24 C-Scepter cells, and 88, well, they're up into the second-rate category, aren't they? 84 plus is a second rate, so they're into a second-rate category. But if they actually get it, I'll wait till see it. Don't take this wrong way, it's 9681, but I take a policy of I will once they actually have the budget and it's installed, then I'll believe it's happening. Sometimes, if they were to share costs, could the USN and the USG order the white paint together, then just use different accents in red and gold, i.e. red and gold? They could do, but the USN likes their grey paint, even though it does seem to show a lot of rust amount. Then, Bruships type question: have you managed to find out why the Nelson class had B turret as a superfine one? What was the thinking at the time? It allowed you to make the shortest possible. Basically, it allowed you to make the ship as short as possible. As I pointed out, if you make C turret the race turret, you actually do have to lengthen the space, because what you can do with B turret being where it is, etc., versus A, B, and C in that particular formation is you can have them closer together. They are closer together. You don't need to. Their clearances are slightly different. Whereas, plus you possibly have to raise up the conning tower a little bit higher because B turret will be closer to it. So yeah, it's about a weight and a size thing. Rankash, I have asked them to actually read about Canadian-US historical relations. Well, yes, and the fact that America has invaded Canada several times, and every time the Canadians have basically won. We'll leave that to one side. The Canadian invasions of America haven't gone that well either, so we'll leave that to one side. GD Hammond, don't forget that the Cold Coast Guard 5,000-ton icebreaker Mackinac is now a museum ship on the Great Lakes. Yeah. Yes, right. I tried out Iron Brew when I was in Scotland, but find it a little too sweet. You need to bring some with you. I haven't been able to bring some yet. Well, it's a soft drink. It's not alcohol. Now I think I'm going to be surviving on Coca-Cola when I'm in America. In Canada, I mean. And in America. Because I think we're possibly going to end up wandering across the border at some point. Possibly, I'm not sure. It depends on, as I said, depends on how much money I very nice. Well, you will very nicely donate, pretty much. Seeing as I still haven't seen any money from the book yet. That's because royalties, I think, are paid quarterly, and because of when it was released, I think I think it's the end of the quarter, and so I don't think I get paid any money on the book till the end of March, or possibly beginning of April, once the quarter's over. So, we'll see. Senator Canary, you have the USS New Jersey. The captain is Darrell Hamilton, but Admiral Lee is the admiral on board. They like each other and let each other do their thing. Additionally, the XO is just as driven. One. Oh, good lord. What are you trying to do? Set up something to single-handedly take over the entire Pacific War. Okay, let's see if I can find Senator Canary, your second point. Driven. As the other two, but in damage control. With 3 months' time to train. How would that ship do solo against Yamamoto during Tengo? New Jersey, with Lee running its gunnery, Darrell Hamilton its speed and maneuvering, and an XO who's obsessed with damage control. It's an interesting one-on-one fight. On paper, Yamamoto with its 18-inch should in theory win. In practice, if it's a one-on-one fight, I would put my money on New Jersey, mainly because I'd say with the maneuvering Darrell Hamilton provides, combined with the accuracy of Lee, the odds are she'll get the first hit and hit more often. And whilst your armor can resist a certain level of impact, the more basically, if enough shells hit, you're going to get a lot of serious damage, and that's probably going to at least degrade the ability of the Yamamoto to actually fire its guns in terms of accuracy, etc. Especially if you take out superstructure and those sort of things with hits. So if you do that, then yeah, I think Jersey wins that myself. It'll be interesting, that. It would explode in the hold. I speak from unfortunate experience. Temperature and altitude change not good. Dang. I do know I need to put anything like I know you're not supposed to put things. Well, the trouble is, I have to admit, usually I travel when I do air travel. I travel more often on self-loading freight, so I'm sort of a bit. I have to remind myself every time of what exactly the advantages are of airline travel. I'm used to being treated terribly and just shoved on an aircraft. Oh. It's fine. It's when you're shoved out of it and you're told to jump. That's when it's more problematic. That explains the knees. John Cash, US Coast Guard to start to reintroduce these electric subs and coastal defense subs. Oh, that'd be fun to watch. I hear it. Well, the AO Battle of the Blockade has a Graf Zeppelin escorted by 2 Bismarcks, sink the Resolution and Revenge in their escort. The Monitor, Erebus, and Terror in Naval. How ridiculous is this? So tell me, is Bismarck, Tirpitz, and Graf Zeppelin versus Resolution, Revenge, their escort, and the Monitor and Terror, Erebus? Why are Erebus and Terror there for starters? They're not going to be sent out into the middle of the ocean for a naval battle. And how have they found 2 R-class battleships on their own? Nicest way, if there are R-class battleships out there, they would be part of the task group. This is one of the points I was making the other day when someone was talking about going, well, what happens if the Germans sent out the 2 Bismarck, Tirpitz, and Scharnhorst and Gneisenau together as a big task group? And I was going, well, in that case, the Royal Navy's task groups would not be 2 ships, there would be 4 or 5 ships. And yeah, there would be more of a problem with them finding their opponents, but the idea would be they'd probably have 2 or 3 or 4 ships in each task group, and they'd probably have a couple of them out. And they'd have carriers with them, and they'd be hunting. And the whole point would be you would try and bring those task groups together to attack the enemy at once. You would never... The Royal Navy's never going to go, the Germans are out there in force, let's go out there in smaller forces so they can outnumber us. No. The Royal Navy is a far larger navy, it can draw more ships. What would probably happen in that circumstance? Well, honestly, I could see Force H would be called out as part of the force hunting. All the R-class and various other battleships and Renown, etc., be called away from their convoys, because there's no point them being there with their convoys on their own, because they'll be outnumbered. So you've got to get them together and group them as a task force. Convoys would be ordered to disperse to suitable ports where they can be safe and protected. You call up your destroyers, your cruisers, everything, and it'll be a full fleet battle. That's what the Royal Navy would drill towards, and the Germans would run into it and would have not fun. So yes, if that force did pick up with just the Resolution, Revenge, and their escort, they probably would sink them. Would they sink them without damage done to themselves? No, they'd probably get damaged. But the thing is, in reality, the British wouldn't... That sort of scenario, the Germans are coming out with that many ships. That's going to get noticed. That's going to be visible. There is no way you can move that many ships without it being spotted and are out there being radio traffic. And secondly, they will group their ships together. So those R's, it would be a case of, right then, we have these R's, they're lovely. You probably find the R's maybe grouped together in a single battle group with Nelson. So you'd have whatever R's available with Nelson, and you probably have Rodney, King George V, Prince of Wales, and Hood combined together. And that would be your 2 4-ship hunting groups. And let's be honest, whilst Hood's probably the weakest of those, with Rodney, King George V, and Prince of Wales, that's a fairly good task group for taking on the Scharnhorst, Tirpitz, and Bismarck in a nicer way. The Scharnhorst, Hood has quite a good chance of them, and especially if Renown comes along as well. Then that would be you'd have 4 fast ships, and you'd have Rodney coming up to basically go, hello, you're currently engaged 2 King George V class and 2 battle cruisers are engaging you. Now, who am I going to engage first? Now you've been slowed down enough for me to catch you. Gneisenau, you've got away from me before, I'm not letting it happen again. And basically, the RN's policy would be quite simple. Each one gets matched up, and the overmatched ship slowly concentrates on the weakest of the enemy, gets rid of them, then the next weakest, then the next weakest, then the next weakest. You don't concentrate against the strongest because that gives because that's going to take the longest to kill. Whereas if you take out the weakest and you work your way up through them, you then can, and the next weakest will then be being attacked by 3 ships. And then the next weakest will be being attacked by 4. And then finally the strongest is getting 5 on 1, or whatever force is remaining of the original 5. That's the sort of scenario the Royal Navy will be playing, because that's what you have to do in that scenario. Sam Johnson, they want to join. I think they do. Lots of countries do want to join NATO at the moment because of the countries on Russia's border are considering joining NATO because of what Russia's been up to. People don't trust them at the moment. Nice one. In the air question, the monitors were the only escorts. Why are the monitors escorting battleships? Why? There'd better be a good discussion on this one at some point. At some point, I'm going to have to go to the AO site and actually read it. So Germany just approved 100 billion additional budget for military funding. Yeah, they're finally raising it up to 2%. So they're finally reaching the NATO minimum. Imagine what Britain will probably react with the idea of, oh no, Germany will be spending more on defence than we are. We're probably going to have to up our defence spending. Could be good. Mancash, sorry, Dr. Clarke, was intended for our Canadian shipmate Stafford in relation to Canada and US relations back in the day. Thank you. Nancy, don't worry, you didn't draw me down the rabbit hole. I enjoyed talking about it. I don't think Russia has taken actions which push surrounding nations to seek membership against traveling. Yeah. Carl Gasberg, Ukraine proper never had nukes. They had Soviet nukes on their territory and controlled Russian forces. Yeah, but when the USSR collapsed, Ukraine got control of those things. Just in Japanese political decision makers have started talking about acquiring nuclear deterrent. I doubt Japan will. I think they'll probably go for anti-ballistic missile defenses before they go for a nuclear deterrent, because there is a legacy thanks to Hiroshima and Nagasaki there. I think that South Korea is probably also going to restart their program. Doubt Sweden would instead of joining NATO. But I do both. I would. I doubt anyone wants to become a nuclear power if they can avoid it. It's a lot of hassle and a lot of maintenance and a lot of cost. Once you're in it, maintaining it is fine, but getting there is expensive. Do you think Nelson class follow on King George V's? 2 quad 16s instead? I don't think anyone would want to go. To make a ship have quad 16 inches, it would be a very fat ship. I mean, it would be massively fat. Quad 16 inches are a lovely way to give yourself a lot of stress. You go for, and besides, in the space of a quad 16 inch, you could probably put a treble 18 inch. Which, if you have watched one of the recent videos I put out, is what I armed my battlecruiser with. And I forgot that the poor Lone Star was armed with 16 inch. Basically, I was arming them both with the best guns I could that I felt were suitable for them and representative of what their nations had put on them. And the trouble is, both had 14-inch armor. And as Paul from Chicago has pointed out to me, it would kind of turn into a bit of a T-boo fight. It wasn't meant to be. It was literally, I just picked my 2 favorites on my battlecruiser designs and let them blast away at each other. And forgot one had 18-inch guns and the other one 16-inch guns. No, so Foxer, in hindsight, how do you redesign the Nagatos for the IJN while keeping them treaty compliant? Ooh. For that, I need a picture of Nagatos. Mm-hmm. Apparently, I have high CPU usage at the moment, so if anything is causing issues, I do apologize. Now, you will be seeing shortly, hopefully, if it works, Onai Nagato. Yes, this is the Onai's file, and let's be honest, it's the Office of Naval Intelligence, so it's about as accurate as you'd expect. Now, they're armed with 16-inch guns in twin turrets. What would I do to keep them treaty compliant? How would I redesign them? Honestly, I'd like to get rid of the casemate guns and replace them with some nice turreted guns, which are slightly more capable for anti-aircraft and dual purpose. Hmm. What I don't like, and this is going to sound strange because this is me being fussy. This is me being really, really fussy. Is differing levels of the guns, because you've got 4 different levels. If you consider it, even this gun, the X turret, is on a different level to A turret. It's actually slightly higher. And I would have. I know they put that in for the necessary clearances, etc., especially over Y turret, but I would have moved heaven and earth to make sure I had X and A turret on the same level in terms of the ship. Because then that actually makes my aiming easier, because then I have 2 turrets which are the same level of the ship. Yes, they're different as a ship, but they allow me to have the same level so I can work out the angles far more easily for them, and then use them as the starting points for the other 2 which are on different levels. I know, it's me being fussy. It's really not necessary, but it's me being fussy. They have a 13-inch belt, 14 inches on the turrets, 14-inch conning tower, decks between 3.5 and 7 inches. Yeah. They're well-designed ships. Honestly, I would just break the treaty completely if I was Japan, though. This is the trouble. You see, the thing is, my policy over Japan and the treaty is that if you're going to break it, you might as well break it properly. Which gets me into trouble with people who are purists. It does, but I don't mind. How does he? All neighbours of Russia and Europe either joined or want to join NATO. Georgia wants to too. I don't know why. Russia is such a peaceful nation. The trouble is, and I would point this out for Russia, and in their offence, no other country is quite so obsessed with realpolitik and actually infecting it. They will do whatever's in Russia's interests. And the trouble is, when you're a big nation which has chronic issues of in terms of your own internal infrastructure and stability, it can often seem external loci of problems and focus can often seem a balm or a safe point to go to. Natigaran, how does World War II go if the RN gets the Fleet Arm in 1932 instead of 1939? Well, that means Henderson probably goes from being Rear Admiral aircraft carriers in 1932 to as well during 1932. Remember, in 1933 he gets promoted to Third Sea Lord. Probably as Third Sea Lord he gets complete charge of procuring aircraft as well as that, as well as the job of being normal procuring ships, because they would have instead of establishing a fifth Sea Lord post, probably put fifth Sea Lord in charge of reorganizing and building up the Fleet Air Arm, but they'd have had the third Sea Lord would still be in charge of procurement. You probably have a lot aggressive in those 5 years, an aggressive approach to engine horsepower. So goodness knows how powerful the Fleet Air aircraft would be, but honestly, they would probably be pushing 1,200 to 1,400 horsepower by 1939 at that point. Because it would be 2 years roughly to implement full control, etc., and get things organized. That being taken up to 1934, which gives them 5 years of procuring aircraft. So that means probably a very different aircraft is used for Toronto and those sort of things, because in 5 years they have enough time to procure some very different aircraft. They might even get something like the Barracuda in service earlier. Oh, I'm agree, Grace. Obviously, there was multiple reasons why Ukraine didn't want those weapons, but still, they only gave up those weapons because of people promising that their security was going to be respected. You're stress testing your battery today, stuff. That's brave on a new phone. Usually, I wait till I've had it for about 2 weeks before I stress test the battery. Basically, I have to work out whether I have any trust in my battery before I actually put it through a stress test. If I don't have trust with it, I just replace the battery. So anyway, I will refer to the New Jersey with Hamilton, Lee, and damage control as XO as Super Jersey. I would refer to it as the Nightmare Jersey, but okay. Cameron, if I remember right from the Iron Brew talking about the X-Force, they sell to the Canadian Army. They do. They do sell to the Canadian Army. I know that because I have friends in the Canadian Army, and they are my other option for getting Iron Brew while I'm out there. If you're watching, you know who you are. Remember your good friend. I was a nice lecturer for you. Ryan Cash, do you think a few diesel electrics could have helped in the mentioned European events? I'm not sure. Honestly, if Ukraine had had such a force, it would have certainly caused a lot of issues for the Russians in their operations. But the Russians would have just had to go anti-submarine warfare overload, and they have a lot of anti-submarine warfare capabilities. So it would have. Would they have survived? I don't know. Would they have still been operating? I don't know. Would they have managed to get some big, high-profile sinkings? Possibly, but we'll find. We'll see. We just don't know. Nice one. Oh, Entra's Rodney was at this battle too, and she survives. So you're telling me Rodney was there with Resolution and Revenge, I think, with those two monitors as escort, and she survives, and the others two are sink. In the nicest way, if Rodney survives, Bismarck and Tirpitz wouldn't have. Because the only way Rodney gets away, because she's slower than both of them, is if she sunk them. And honestly, I wouldn't put her past her, but definitely Graf Zeppelin isn't getting away, because that's just going to be a juicy target for someone on Rodney. Okay. Let's go around. How happy would the RFA be if they got 24 Wave class, 8 TIE class tankers, and 6 Fort Victorias? They'd be absolutely ecstatic, but they'd be asking, what are you expecting us to support? What size Royal Navy do you want us to have? Ian Stradling, they'd probably ask, why are we getting Fort Victorias, not something newer and better? They can do the job that's bigger. Ian Stradling, when major units wander around the sea without support, US Indianapolis happens. It can do, but there's issues. Going on, if the French had attacked the Germans in 1913, how hard would the RN have pushed to help the Germans if they could have the whole the French Channel coast post-war? Not very, because in nicest way they like the coast being fought over. They don't want to actually have to control it, because then they'd have to protect it. If you own the French Channel coast, then you have to station the army there to protect it, and suddenly you have a major continental commitment. And the army can keep going, we need to be bigger to defend our continental holdings. So, frankly, the Royal Navy doesn't want any holdings in Europe if they can avoid them. So, Rankash, I have another friend. I have had another hard time recently explaining the Italian Navy was more of a threat to us in World War II than the German Navy. It has been a long and tedious affair. That doesn't surprise me. It's just people just go, but they're the Italians. No, they are actually a fairly efficient, capable navy, and they are far larger than the German Navy is at any point in World War II. And they're fairly concentrated and organised. Oh gosh, and they're in a far more annoying place. Stuff Thompson. Will we see Queen Elizabeth, Wasp, 2 Type 83, 2 RCN Type 26, 2 Type 26, 3 Type 1, and 3 astute RFA support in task forcing? That would be a lot of astutes. It would be a lovely task force to have, but it would be a lot of the Royal Navy, and I don't think we're going to get soon because the Type 83s haven't even cut steel yet by a long way. I haven't got a design for them. You haven't even let out a paper design for them yet. Oh gosh, I've tried to make the destroyers, battleships, cruisers, making the Italian as a real navy, only to meet with Italians World War II. Ha ha comments. Yeah, there are people in this world who never get past the cartoons. And in the cartoons, as we all know, the Italians are the only real characters in them because the Allied ones always have to be kind of brave and kind of honourable. And the Germans are always the bad guys. And the Italians, they can be good guys, they can be cowards, they can be brave, they can be evil, they can be anything. They're the interesting ones in the cartoons, usually. Why do the Mersey class trawlers use real people's names? No idea. I'd have to look them up. Sonic and Hero, you've used a word which I haven't. I think I have seen, but in a long time. So you have to explain that one in a little bit of detail. I don't think we can get 4% across NATO and Stafford. No one's going to want to play with that. Second, no. Germany is going to 2% over the next 5 years. They're not going to 4%, Seneca Nero. They've announced 100 billions worth of funding, but that basically means they're paying for the unfunded projects which they were supposed to be paying for, and they are going to get to 2% over the next 5 years. This is not defense budget. They are spending 100 billion to fix the problems which they haven't fixed in the last 20 years. John Cash, in this dull debate, I noticed you and Drac have not done an Operation Pedestal video or live. Not yet. We have thought about it. We just want Jamie to be involved. Yeah, we have an area on the Discord which does allow politics, is sort of open for some degree of political discussion, which is the discussions through bilge pumps. So on my Discord server, which there's linked to down below, there is a bilge pump section. And in bilge pumps, we allow politics within rules, though. It has to be respectful. You can't spam messages at people, and I am almost tempted to set it up so that there is a limit that you can only post once every few seconds. You can't just keep spamming posts at people. just to make sure it keeps respectful. I'm watching it. China is the true second power in the world. Russia is only strong because of legacy of the Russia seems to be only strong at the moment because of its nuclear weapons. It keeps whacking them around. Every time they're in trouble, they go, "Well, we got nukes. We'll nuke you." And it's a case of, okay, you know, this is good. I can't repeat the line which goes through my head when I hear it, but if you've ever, in a nicest way, dealt with, how to put it, there's always one guy, usually a guy, sometimes it's a girl, but usually it's a guy, who, when you're at dinner and you're meeting them for the first time, will spend their entire time talking about their fancy BMW or their fancy Mercedes and saying how great it is, how the whole time. And I have usually those people get very shocked if you get when you get up and you're sort of walking to the cars. And with me, of course, it's a Subaru, which to a certain mind is a very, very good car. To me, is a very, very good car, but he's not exactly known as a fancy car. But I did have this meeting once with someone, and sort of the friend who would introduce me all at party for drives a very tricked out Volkswagen Golf because he loves the Volkswagen Golfs. That's what he always drives. So we go back to the cars, and it's just, they're all sort of roughly in a row in the parking lot. And yeah, had a shock. One of the other guys who was very quiet, chatting away, he had an Aston Martin. So the guy who'd been bragging about his car being the best car in the world, and BMW, this, and then there's an Aston Martin DB9 sitting there, and it's a case of, if you have to talk about how powerful you are and tell people how powerful you are, you probably aren't powerful. If you have to tell people how smart and how brilliant you are, you probably aren't smart or brilliant. You still have, as I go back to point, you have to be able to confident in your actions and sing your abilities. But you have to do it in a way which doesn't sound like you're bragging the whole time. And it's one of the things I watch for myself, because trouble is I have a very factually orientated personality when it comes to conversation. I'm very bad at small talk. And one of my tends tricks when I'm trying to get people to talk, and I want them to talk to me, is I share. Because I don't think I should ask, it's one of these to try and get you to talk to you about yourself. I will share stuff about myself. But I always have to be careful because it sounds like if it sounds like I could be bragging. So I always have to sort of gauge the audience and try and get, because it's a trick which I try and use, but it's a trick which is a conversational technique which is very easy to go wrong with. But it's a factor of my personality I watch. Why would you strip out a turret? Admittedly, if I could, honestly, with this ship, if I was going to do it myself, I'd make it free triple 16-inch guns. 2 forward, 1 aft, probably on this design. That would be the easiest way to fit into this design system and the structure, but. And you could fit it, it's fat enough, let's be honest. Or big beamed, as some people have written. Big framed, Dan Freeman's put. Because let's be honest, those turrets are kind of swallowed by that hull. There again, if I was cheating, I would say I'd reduce the engines or something, and I put in 3 or 4 triple turrets. Have a go to sea with 12 16-inch guns and watch the Americans have a panic attack. Like Gacy, do you see European countries upping their defence spending and keeping it up? Or just raise it temporarily, lowering, and once the crisis is over and Russia will be seen as a weaker foe? Oh, probably the latter if they can get away with it. Remember, Governments don't like to spend money on defence if they can avoid it, because defence doesn't tend to win them votes. That's what their perception is. So that's awesome. I know that that Ambry is an alcohol, but you said you might try to pass it off as wine, and that could get taken away from you. Oh, cruel. I was thinking the glass bottle iron brew. Oh well. There are some countries where it's easier to get wine through than soft drinks. That's a great run. Is it a myth that small tube boilers are fuel hungry? It depends what type you're talking about, a small tube boiler. Because there are types which are fuel hungry, and there are types which it depends what they're designed for. If a boiler is designed to provide you very high speed, you're probably going to be less worried about its fuel efficiency. If you're trying to go for long range, then it's probably going to be a very fuel efficient design. And it's more to do with the burners and the way they're structured and how they generate the heat that affects that sort of scenario. Because again, long endurance ship, you probably don't need to worry about it getting up to speed quickly. So you can have it a more gradual increase in burn, which can produce more efficiency. But if you want it to be able to get a high speed very, very quickly, you want a higher burn, and the higher, quicker burn is probably going to be fuel inefficient. And that 961 does 6 octuple and 9 quadruple 40mm seem doable in Admiral class battlecruiser hull? Potentially. I can't see why you couldn't do it. It'd be mainly making sure you could get the supplies of 40mm to all those guns in the necessary space from where you could store them. Okay, did it. Run cash. Okay, so I'm thinking Dr. Clarke, the IJN shifted from twin turrets into conventional layouts, or put turrets anywhere in Fuso, but they went to triple turrets. Was there some Eureka moment for that? Basically, it's going to triple turrets is when you realise that that's a more efficient option. Once you have the technology working for a triple turret doesn't make a sense for larger guns as an efficient option. When you're talking smaller guns, twin turrets tend to work out better. Once you're below 6 inches, you're probably wanting twins. 6 inches and above, triple's probably a more efficient design. Okay, thank you, Doctor. See you on Thursday. Can't wait to listen to Belge Props 82. We'll try not make it depressing. We've got Wilf coming on. That's going to be good. Off her own. That's right. Why didn't the Admiral Hipper class use the 3.5-inch SK C-32 naval gun for a secondary battery? Because the Germans were obsessive. And because it didn't fit any of the boxes perfectly. But it would have been a good dual-purpose one. Sort of, they could have modified it enough to be. I think the shocking thing with Ukraine is the underperformance of the Russian army. I'm not really sure. You see, to me, the Russian army has been hamstrung by three things. One, the doctrine, the overall arching view of what they were going in seems to me to be an issue. But that's me stating as a naval historian from what I've seen on the press and looking around and those things. I don't have any prior knowledge, etc. But they seem to have generally thought they wouldn't meet the resistance they did. And they seem to have thought their logistics would not be attacked like it was, which I think has affected their performance. I also think they were operating under the presumption that they would be greeted either as liberators or at least acquiesced to, and therefore would not be facing the need to fight the civilians like they're doing. That would certainly explain some decisions early on, because they thought they could do it quickly. I do worry how it's going to turn now, because when they're actually fighting, then they might be tempted to. Now they're getting more resistance, they could end up reacting out of that, and there could be all sorts of things done. So, yeah, and they're deploying thermobaric rocket launchers and other systems, which are. They're not what I would call weapons of war, they're weapons of intimidation. There's an old scene from Stargate SG-1 where O'Neill has Carter fire her MP-90 and basically demolishes a tree. and the Jafar rebellion fire their staff weapons. And O'Neill describes it as the staff weapon is a weapon of intimidation. It's big, it's scary, boom, but it's not really a good combat weapon. The MP90 is a good combat weapon. And that's the thing. Thermobaric rocket launchers, they are not good combat weapons. They're not precise enough. They don't have they almost cause almost too much damage in that you are going to wreck, especially for urban warfare, civilian infrastructure. They are weapons of intimidation rather than weapons of war, I would describe them as. And I worry about them being employed. I have a feeling the meeting which is being proposed for tomorrow is going to be more of Russia trying to dictate terms of surrender for Ukraine than actually having a meeting about a ceasefire. I just hope nothing else happens on it. But again, what do you think of NATO countries willing to sell or give fighter jets to Ukraine, allow their citizens to volunteer to fight the Russians as part of foreign division of the Ukraine army? They probably won't, but also, where's Ukraine going to base them from? The thing is, for Ukraine to have any weapons come in, they need to be able to support them and fight them. And the thing is, you can't do something like you did with the Flying Tigers in China versus the Japanese because or what you did in Spain, because you honestly haven't got the relative depth of operational space. Because aircraft are far longer range. There's pretty much nowhere in Ukraine that Russian aircraft can't reach. I would say that Ukraine is doing quite well. I would say more useful would be if drones started appearing, because drones, the Ukrainians seem to be using drones quite effectively, and they could probably, if they could have more, that would make their life a lot. That would probably help and cover up the role. Nice. What was the point of a mixed battery of 105 millimeter, 37 millimeter, 20 millimeter on Java chips? Because it would give them a lot of options. Basically, the idea was it would allow them to engage all targets, and that their envelopes would be mutually beneficial. Nice. How does Denmark Strait go with Hood and Wales if it's a nighttime battle as Holland had planned? Probably more problematic for the Germans. So nighttime battle as they planned, the British radars are probably better, and it might well allow them to get closer. Oh gosh, what is your Discord, Dr. Clarke? There's a link down below. In the description of this video, there'll be a link. There's a link to it. Not a wolf. Is it true they had enough chemical and bioweapons to carry out mutually assured destruction in World War II? Probably. Let's be honest, both the British and the Germans had huge stockpiles, and both sides knew that if the other one deployed it, they'd use it. Honestly, the Germans were always more worried about the British using it. Because remember, the British did use it first. Cash, Russia is a paper tiger military. They have so few of their new fancy items. They have terrible free command control and training, and morale of conscripts kept in check. Bullying. Yes and no. They have some very good training, and unfortunately, I would say the better units have been held back. I would say the better units have been held back and are starting to be employed now, and that's when the real trouble is for the Ukrainians. I'm sure they're Christians. I like people who constantly say I'm a good person. Who are you trying to influence? Usually, I just say people are surviving, and I'm not. And I never claimed to be sane in the first place. That's my usual description of myself when people talk to me. This is Voxo. With hindsight, how would you redesign the armor carriers in World War II? How much credence is there to US prediction that said carriers would be active 5 days in the invasion of Japan? The US prediction that was that they wouldn't have any carriers. The only carriers active within 5 days of the invasion of Japan would be the British armored carriers. That was one of the reasons why they were building the Midway class. One of the reasons why, because their carriers weren't designed to take that level of impact and survivability. If I was going to redesign the armored carriers in World War II, I would keep them in construction and not have the break from Churchill. I would also have made them bigger. Honestly, I would probably want them all indefatigable, implacable sized from the beginning, and so they'd all be roughly up that sort of tonnage end and that sort of size with probably the same sort of level armor. All those things, and I would just keep churning them out. I would have churned them out. That would have been perfectly fine for most of all. So with hindsight, I would just make them slightly bigger, but keep the armor, keep everything else. Gosh, I'm good at small talk as a lecturer and seminars. As I said, I run these like I run seminars. I'm good in those scenarios. I am not so good. I do admit I have a weakness when it comes to one-on-one conversation. I'm good with family. I'm good with friends. I'm good in seminars. I'm not so good with new people I haven't met before. I tend to either go quiet and listen, or if they aren't talking, I try and draw them out themselves by talking about myself a bit. I try not to do it too much, as I said, because I find the thing is to try and get people to talk about themselves and to share themselves so you can build a connection and you can talk. You sometimes need to share first. This is my policy. I try not to share too much though, because that can come across as bragging, especially me, because I've had a weird and wonderful life and I've enjoyed it, and I do enjoy it greatly. But there are a list of things which I've done which are not exactly normal and can come across as bragging. Nice experiment. Why does Prince Eugen gain only 42 tons of additional displacement with all hurry fits? They don't add in much, and they take out stuff, and there isn't much space in the beginning to add up and stuff. Colin Cameron, I have a slightly beaten up Dacia. It scares people in fancy cars that they have a couple of streets and I haven't had it painted. Yep. Bichon, as the Humphrey station in Yes Minister, Britain has nukes to deter the French. Certainly. Can't let them have them and we not have them. Flattery. Hello, Matt. I don't think I've seen you in a while. Or before, maybe. I'm not sure. I think I have seen you before. Do you know if the Indian Navy sank any Indian warships in World War II? I don't think they did. Not warships. I think they had a go at a couple of submarines, but I don't know if they sank them from memory. And they did have some go at some smaller light craft, not warships, but basically, I think they caught a landing craft at one point. But again, it's from memory. I've honestly, that's one of the navies I want to go and do some research in. But the National Archives on the Indian Navy UK National Archives on the Indian Navy isn't necessarily that great, because mostly it concentrates on what the Royal Navy ships were doing out in the Indian Ocean, because they were the big ones doing most of the work. And to an extent, the RIN ships were mostly sloops and smaller. Interesting. Small tube boilers should not be fuel hungry. This is supposed to be one of their major advantages. It is in comparison to large tube boilers, but still, some of them do have a reputation for being quite fuel hungry because they were designed to be interesting. Okay, going back to our forward gun episode, do you think Hooden went bow on against Bismarck because their belt couldn't take it, or they needed to get closer to Haida? I think they were trying to get closer to Haida. Drummond, it's my opinion so far that yes, Ukraine is losing, but they're also supposed to be losing. Russia is taking heavy losses, and morale, at least of certain units, seems to be poor. That is the problem. It's a case of Russia are winning, but they're not winning as big as they're supposed to be, according to all their press, which is almost as bad for them as losing. Yeah, they are. Thermo barracks are really not good. I haven't heard they've actually used them yet, but unless they've used them while I've been live. The Turkish drones are doing fairly well, it seems, from some of the videos. Mm. I don't. Yeah, the Zatniktel was probably a better weapon, and the right choice to get the cast out of jam. Yes, wasn't it? One shot for the Zats, one shot stunned, two shots killed, three shots disappeared the body at one point. I wonder if the Swedish Strill doctrine will look more credible now, as it seems likely it would suit the Ukrainian situation, especially drones. I think it does seem, and in the nicest way, I am wondering how much of the Strill doctrine has been adopted by the Ukrainian forces, because some of their actions does seem to suggest that sort of operational doctrine is being employed by them. Same trend, better units may also be being held out and more likely to think for themselves along the lines of what I'll be doing. Also, they're more expensive. The better units are mostly made up of contract rather than conscript soldiers, and they are expensive. And you have to pay far more if they get anything happens on them. I understand decorations, don't worry. Take care, Tanner. Right, gosh, they haven't succeeded and are now in the worst form of war for their army, a static urban war extending supply lines hostile territory. The actual warfare issues which now show logistics. Yeah, logistics are the problem with fighting in Ukraine. There's a lot of distance and everything. You need a lot of security to secure your lines of supply, and that could also be holding them up because instead of being able to use troops for attacks, they're having to use them for logistics protection. I heard that SpaceX's Starlink is being used in. Yeah, it is. Basically, I've Musk has sent some things out there. I'm not sure they got there yet, but they have offers and support. Are trying to get Starlink set up there to help them. Rankash, awesome. No, none of you are dullards. There's no such thing as a. Honestly, that's a phrase I hate. It's like when people call people stupid. I can say people do stupid things, but I don't consider anyone ever stupid. It's one of those realities. The first rule of my classes and the first rule of any revision centre I run, when I run them for Justin Craig, wonderful revision company, is there is no such thing as a stupid question. Because any question by itself cannot be stupid, because if you're asking a question, that means you, unless you're asking it for silly reasons, but if you're genuinely asking a question, then that question is asked in order to gain knowledge. And acquiring knowledge is never stupid. Or to acquire understanding, which is another form of knowledge. And acquiring knowledge is never stupid. Acquiring understanding is never not stupid. So there is no such thing as any question asked legitimately because you don't know, not to be silly, but legitimately. can never be stupid because it's about acquiring knowledge or understanding. So it can never be stupid. And I always try and drum that into make sure the kids get that, make sure everyone gets that, because that changes your approach to schooling, that changes your approach to education, that changes your approach to life. Because suddenly, if that's your view and that's the view you can of people around you, and you've managed to impress on them, then suddenly a lot of the pressure in education, I see kids going through this. Okay, I can't ask those questions because I look like I'm stupid. Well, the joy of the revision coming away from is you're not going to see any of these other kids forever again in your life, probably. So who cares? B, the purpose of schooling education is to get knowledge. And if you don't understand, find a way. There's always the option of going up to the teacher after class. And if that's not the case, if you don't feel confident enough in going up to a teacher at the end of the class and asking them, if you don't want to ask in front of people, that a question like that, then honestly, that teacher's failed, in my opinion. If you're not confident enough to go up to the end of the class to your lecturer and go, I didn't want to disrupt the class, but I didn't quite get this bit, and they're not happy to answer it, then they failed. Now, there can be times like I've said to students, no problem, I can't do this now because I've got to rush to another lecture, but here's you can either email it to me and I'll send you an email response back, or you can meet me in my office hours. I'll be this place that time. And that's how you approach it. There should never be anything in your students' minds that there is such a thing as a stupid question. And because there aren't, because people aren't stupid, there is no such thing. It's, if ever there's a problem in the world, it usually comes down to lack of knowledge and lack of understanding. And therefore, if people ask those questions, there wouldn't be so much lack of knowledge and lack of understanding. They'd actually know the answers. So that's why there's no such thing as a stupid question. Sorry, rant over. Now, when did KMS Animal Clipper get a clip about? Oh, not too long into World War II, I think. I heard Ukraine plans to make Russia. They might dream of it, but I doubt they're going to. I doubt Putin will actually pay for it or anything. It's a paper talk. Oh, cool. E-battery. They removed the third shot disintegrating since it made it overly powerful and too convenient plot hole. Miles McCaskill, how do you feel about your YouTube streams being railroaded by Ukraine questions? If I don't feel I can answer them, I'll always say. If I feel I can help, I will say. But I try not to get into too much because, to be fair, that is part of the reasons I do Bruships, to discuss these things. And mainly, though, it's why we do Bilge Pumps. So we can talk about modern events with historically informed modern events debates. And the Bilge Pumps that's the podcast. And as I said, tomorrow we are recording with Wilf Owen, and who is a wonderful ground warfare specialist. You will not find anyone better than him. I keep suggesting it to him that he should find a way of setting up his own podcast on land warfare like we do with Bilge Pumps for the sea warfare, because the stuff you will learn from listening to him talk is going to be absolutely amazing. And it's the reason we haven't wanted to get too much into Ukraine is because we couldn't get him on till tomorrow. And the thing is, having him on gives us someone who is an absolute, amazingly credible expert to talk about it. Because it's like there are so many people who are on Twitter suddenly are experts in land warfare, on armored warfare, and Russian armor doctrine. And I know I am sitting there going, I'm amazed you suddenly got this skill. Whereas Wilf actually has the expertise. He is the expert. Rakash, I would have been interested to see if they could counterattack. We've not seen Ukrainian armor or Air Force in the game. The Air Force actually has been doing a fair bit of work. Ukrainian armor You see, the thing is, there's the forward armor, which is mostly around the Donbass region, but there's the reserve armor, which is mostly sitting in the southeast, no, the southwest and the northwest of the country, which could start moving. I'm not sure. It's going to depend on, again, on how they can move under the air environment, which is not quite completely controlled by the Russians. That's just by their failure of their paratroopers to actually manage to land, but is certainly dominated by the Russians. So, Thompson, I've got my high guard lance weapon figured out to the point of needing to learn AutoCAD now. Cool. Yeah, you shouldn't lie to your troops, Darishvalsky. That's something you should never lie to your troops. Actually, quickly, let's see. Do you think governments will try to stop citizens leaving to fight in Ukraine as per Ukrainian president's invitation? I doubt it. Strider, there are many times I needed to go up and ask. I just wasn't in the right mind. Well, if you've got a good lecturer, you should always they should find a way to spot it. Occasionally, it's difficult. When I'm teaching hundreds upon hundreds of students, then it's difficult. Which is why, to be honest, I'm not so worried about the. It's going to sound strange. I quite like doing the seminars. I prefer doing in person. I have to admit that is a lot easier. But doing the online lectures are something which I find quite useful because people are more likely to chat and send direct messages or questions to you, and you can then find a way to answer them. And that has certainly proved to be an advantageous thing of the online teaching. Robo, hello. Suppose in London-Washington Treaty, signatories agreed to be allowed to exceed the agreed total on individual ship per ship lines of tonnage, maybe gun caliber, in exchange for a payment of a yearly fee to all signatories while the ship was in the water. Not a service, else they would just mothball it straight. This fee would also increase quite steeply with each increase. So the first 10,000 total into 20-inch caliber gunship are much cheaper than the next. Who might have indulged? Oh, Britain and America. Japan possibly would have possibly, but Britain and America could actually afford to do it and would have probably been tempted to. You'd probably had very different ships though, and then some of the ones that actually turn up. And it probably wouldn't be sort of 10,000 tons. In the nicest way, King George V, you could probably fix for an extra 5,000-6,000 tons in a given speed. Mm. They are keeping armor reserves to protect Kiev. They probably have some armor tucked away in Kiev. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a fair amount of armor sitting in Kiev in various places. Miles McGusson, hello. Given how the battle is going and given the world responses so far, do you think Putin regrets his decision to invade? Do you think this could become an existential threat to Putin? I think it depends on what happens. If he manages to win, and win bigly, to quote another interesting gentleman, yeah, he could survive it. But if he loses, or if he's forced to settle for something which is far less than what he wanted, then he could be in trouble. Existential threat to Putin, not necessarily, but a threat certainly to his power and undermining of his authority, which is problematic for us because I think either way you end up with a wounded bear of Putin lurching around to try and restore his authority and image. I think even at the moment, I think the trouble is Putin's always been action man president, and at the moment he's getting shown up a bit by Zelensky, who I think is doing it almost actively on purpose, not just for morale of his people, but it's doing it because it shows up Putin. Putin is supposed to be the action man president, and Zelensky's actually out there being the action man president. And goodness knows what Vichenko is doing, because frankly, a world heavyweight boxer running around with various sorts of weaponry, being mayor of Kiev and doing all the things he's doing is frankly scary. Some of the stories I'm hearing coming out from him, if even a quarter are true, and that's what I usually believe in a thing, that the maximum number of stories true would probably be about a quarter. This is the more respectable quarter, I believe. I'm sort of semi-inclined to believe he is getting up to some really interesting stuff, that guy. I think also the trouble for Putin isn't going to bite now. He's still got some reserves and he's fighting the war, but I think it's going to start hitting a week from now, 2 weeks from now. I think it'll be interesting what happens on Tuesday morning, not Monday morning, but Tuesday morning, with the Swift banking and the stuff percolating up. And I think the announcement of LNG terminals from Germany could have a big issue for him. Not quite as big an issue as if they said they were reactivating their nuclear power program, but certainly a big issue on other fronts. Sometimes, do you think the Russians will follow refugees up to the Poland border or let them go and not approach NATO? I would not like to be the Russians who get too close to the Polish border, because the Poles do not have good memories of Russians getting close to their border. And yeah, I wouldn't. And I don't think the Russians are really heading in that direction at the moment. They seem to be trying to give Poland as wide a berth. There are NATO countries and there is Poland. This is the country of ORP Pirun when going, hello, we are Poles. They are one of the few militaries in NATO which is fully worked up, fully capable, and definitely fully tasked in land warfare, and very, very capable and very hard, or very motivated. I honestly, if any force intervened in Ukraine, you couldn't have a worse one for the Russians to intervene than the Polish. Because if the Polish intervened, then there would be a big problem for the Russians. They would need to bring a lot more of their troops to win that. But the trouble is that would be NATO intervening in there, so it would automatically widen the conflict. So who knows what's happened. But how much of a submarine force do you think the Russians still have in operation? They have a fairly decent submarine force in operation, but it's maintaining them in operation. Their submarine force get the first budget, and remember, they've been upgrading. They've actually been building these submarines and keeping them going. Is Russia doomed to decline even if Putin is removed? It's a big existential question. That depends on a lot of issues, including how much money they spend on infrastructure, honestly enough. Russian infrastructure seems to be very patchy in certain areas, and they need more of an integrated infrastructure network. Take care, Darius Russell. Good luck walking the dog. Take care, Mr. Traveling. Thank you for watching. And thanks, Miles, for the super chat. Thank you, everyone, for the super chat. It's very kind of you. Not Wolf. Why don't I start saying my sailing classes? I give the no stupid questions spiel and intersperse questions I've asked as a legally blind guy into it. It works wonders. I intersperse questions as a dyslexic I asked when I was growing up. Again, similar reasons. Given the rusting FB35Bs, they're not rusting that much. The RN, remember, stores them in hangars, so we can watch these things. To convert the Cornelius to Catabar for Sea Tempest or an F-35B replacement. Well, Sea Tempest isn't going to happen. In the nicest way, for Tempest, you would have to the Tempest hasn't been built yet, but already the airframe, etc. design they're talking about is not rough strip capable. If they were talking about building a rough strip capable landing airframe, then that could possibly be modified to Catabar. So it's not going to happen. It would be like a Sea Farm, only modern and far worse. F-35B replacement would probably be F-35C. So what's the point? It's probably going to have the same issues. Say if the Suez Crisis goes differently and quoted, the Anglo-French coalition controls and holds the canal, how does it affect either Navy and does the Falklands happen? Probably both navies stay larger. And does the Falklands happen? Well, that depends on the British Foreign Office and what signals they send to the Argentinians versus the government, because the Foreign Office was conducting one policy and the government conducting another one, and then there was also the removal of the Arctic Patrol ship, and I just go to, oh god, bad signalling. For that, you really want to go and read some of the works done by some of them. There are some good authors at the moment publishing that. John Varrett, a modified version, all free, G3, all forward main guns, 10 6-inch secondaries, and 4-inch thirds. Good idea or not? Could be. Could be. That sounds quite a useful ship to me, but you know. Using the Swift is smaller than the other part of the announcement about the G7 are doing to the Russian Central Bank reserves. Swift actually has more of an impact than you think, because it will have it doesn't have it'll have a massive impact on the actual interbanking systems. So it's something which will have a cumulative impact, as I said, Tuesday. Rangash, Dr. Clarke, as Vladimir Kazhanshin has called out Putin for a mano-a-mano fight, and your shoulders are getting stacked. Do you think nothing's time to call the Russian president out? No. Besides, I need to work on this. This is the trouble with me. The moment I start back in the gym and start getting fit, my legs go quickly, and they return to their normal, quite strong as a thing. My arms and upper body does. Tummy takes ages for me. That's basically it. Just hangs around on the tummy. Check that Haida funding. When I said that I see it max out limit, I meant I actually see it that it doesn't max out. Oh, good lord. That's why. Okay. I will do. I'm going to have to... I've just been messaged and told the dogs need me to put them to bed. So I'm going to finish this at about 10:30, which is about another 4 minutes. Which is quite good. It's been 3 hours and roughly 45. Not quite the 5 hours which Drax dry dock is today, and it's a really good dry dock. I recommend it. I'm up to hour 4 of it. Yes, there have been lots of wars against USSR by the Poles and the Finns, and they've had interesting times with them. Colin, Doc, do you know if anyone has done a paper on what events via army surplus stores? I know the owner of one. His types and the amount of sales seem to be highly reflective things. Not yet. Not from memory. I was asking, also, Polish forces are already partially deployed in Belarus border due to migration crisis, along with medium-weight equipment, mainly PCs and armoured cars. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an armoured brigade sitting not far away from them now. I just have that feeling from discussions I've had with friends, etc. I wouldn't be surprised if there is an armoured unit sitting down in the south east of Poland, just in case. Why is Putin making so many enemies? He's making himself an enemy of the aviation world. He doesn't care. Putin is after his version of realpolitik of a great Russia and a strong legacy for himself. And we should all be worried because when autocrats start seeking legacies, this is usually what happens. And who's also looking for a legacy moment? Xi Jinping, which can be even more worrying. So, we'll see. Okay, can we call you Alex Alexander? Most people do. I don't mind. I honestly don't mind. People call me all sorts of names. The only time I ever insist on my title is usually when I'm dealing with people who are being a bit arrogant and shitty to my colleagues. I have to admit, when I've had students who are being dismissive, especially of occasional female colleagues, I remind them that they're supposed to call the lecturers by their titles. And I go, well, that makes me Dr. Clarke, and this makes this person Dr. Well, in the case of once my sister was, when I was with my sister and I were delivering a joint lecture, and they were calling me Prof, and they kept calling her Miss. And also going, well, A, my sister's the senior lecturer in this room, and I'm the contract lecturer. And B, she's your head of course. So I quietly reminded that boy, in front of the entire group, all 300 of them, that it's Dr. Clarke, because I'm only a doctor, not a professor, just as my colleague here is also Dr. Clarke, because they are a senior lecturer. Not a professor, but a senior lecturer. It made the point. Thank you, Dan. No, gosh, Dr. Clarke, I used to run 5 to 10 miles and had a belly still. Don't worry, it's genetics. It is fun. And 5 to 10 miles, good for you. I do, my standard gym workout at the moment is 5K on the treadmill, which is depressing. I don't, unlike Dan, I don't post pictures to Instagram on it because, frankly, I look terrible. And then 5K on the bike, and then about a K on the rower, and usually on the hand bike thing, I try and do another 5K as well on that. So I try and that's my cardio workout, which I do at least 3 times a week, just to try and torture myself. This is is HMS Conqueror the only modern sub to sink a hostile warship? Yes, I think so, from memory. Benjamin, could Western Ukraine become a pro-West rump state if things go badly? Potentially. Potentially. It depends what the Russians do. And I don't think the Russians are doing as well as they hoped they would do. So, yeah. That's my castle, thank you. Right, enough. Ooh. Do you believe the air war over Ukraine is going as poorly for the Russians as it appears? Goes to the Kiev stuff aside, which is probably not true. It does appear that Russian tank and supply columns are being taken out. It is interesting. I think the trouble is it's often tempting to attribute all the most disastrous tank columns and supply columns have been taken out by aircraft. It does seem to be by drones. But I'd say a lot of their columns and a lot of damage is being done by small infantry units attacking from forests and other areas just quietly and attacking the roads, because the Russians are, it's a 200-mile long stretch they are trying to protect, and they're just not everywhere, and the supply convoys have just not been that protected. Honestly, they need to be more alert, and they need to be not in single file, and they need to be all sorts of things to protect them. But that's going to slow down supplies, and that's the trouble. If you're trying to run logistics quickly, you need those logistics to be moving. It's kind of like the convoy system. From World War II. If you want the most efficient system, the ships sail individually, and as soon as they're ready, they go, and it's a continuous conveyor belt. If you want the most protected system, you have to save up those ships into a convoy and protect that convoy heavily. But that takes a lot of resources to protect. That's the problem they're dealing with. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Bijan. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Nice one. He's destroyed one rare and beloved aircraft made out. Yeah, I know. The AN-25 225 is always loved. Bijan, in America, everyone is a professor. Yeah. Possibly that's what he'll settle for, but I'm not sure. I look terrible in my running selfies too. Trust me, I look worse. I do free lifting and squats as well. Don't worry, I do. Believe it or not, you don't get shoulders like this out doing free lifting. And a lot of pull-ups and push-ups and all sorts of other things. How different would you say the attitude and ideals between uni college students and older professors and public? It can be a spectrum. And also, you have to remember that some of the loudest voices might not be representative of the whole. They're just the loudest voices. Always watch out for that. People consider their loudest voices the representative majority. They might not be. Right. Thank you, Strider. I'll be on again on Thursday. Next decade, we'll see us spent preparing for this war again by everyone. More than likely. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you. I don't think I consider that a kill, Sean Mack, the sub bashing into another sub. It's not really the intended method of killing a sub. And anyway. Take KDG40, thank you, Bishon. Thank you, Rosarski, thank you, Rowan Cash. Night 6 everyone. Thank you, bad guy. And thank you, Not Wolf, Jonathan Burrow, Alzaski. Thank you, everyone. Take care. And that's good, Roland. Yes, you should get in the gym. It's good for you. It lets you live longer. Take care. Nora Converse, I think Val's passion is to do the unexpected. I mean, he is and was very clear when someone can expect bad things. Like, you see, the thing is, yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, and take care. Take care. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Seneca. Thank you, Robel. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have fun. And Bob Fry. Thank you, Dan Freeman. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Stafford. And thank you, Sean, for doing the adminning. Thank you very much, everyone. And take care, Strider.